Their work will be remembered as one of the greatest moments of this planet.
Mr. Scout. I know you're still weighing whether to return to Lumen. But the mark I've come to know is happy.
Hello, is anyone there? Is the board on? It's Marquez from Macro...
What you all did was one of the most painful moments in the history of this company.
What the hell?
But the four of you have become known as the face of Severance reform.
Okay, so we're not in trouble?
I don't think so. Milchick said we're famous.
All of us equally, or one of us is like the star?
Now if you feel that you can't go on.
So what the hell did you guys see up there?
It's not our world up there.
And your life is filled with much confusion.
My Audi's wife died a few years ago. Except the woman is Miss Casey.
So what are you gonna do?
I gotta get her out of here.
Mark, your Annie said she's alive.
This is obscene.
I just want to be sure.
And your world around is coming.
Why did you do this? What is this all about?
Do you know something about Gemma?
Mark, there'll be no honeymoon ending for you.
Their work will be remembered as one of the greatest moments of this planet.
You don't value them. You fear them. We fear no one.
I'm tightening the leash.
If we let this happen to Miss Casey, who's gonna step up when it happens to us?
Now. Goodbye, Marquez.
Wait!
My name is Miss Huang. It's my first day here as deputy manager. Mark W.
Why are you a child?
Because of when I was born.
Miss Marshall White on the 9th floor. Specialties department, looking for a gold thimble. The odds are that you'll find it. But there are even better odds that you'll find something else. Because this isn't just a department store. This happens to be the Twilight Zone.
Oops, indeed, we are stepping into the Twilight Zone like we have never before. And this is something I hope to see a little bit more of in the future of Severance. We know that Ben Stiller is a huge Twilight Zone fan. He has been on record stating multiple times that Twilight Zone is a huge influence behind the show. And tonight we got a really good dose of some good old-fashioned classic Twilight Zone brilliance. And the after hours tie-in that we see later on in the episode, and some of the deeper themes and deeper meanings, even behind the kind of surface level winks and nods, which we'll definitely discuss a little bit tonight as well. But welcome, everybody. Here we are, folks. Episode 9 of Severance is here. I still cannot believe there is only one episode left. This season seemed to just whip by so fast. And I remember each week, even stating this to you, like, holy crap, it's like tomorrow's already Thursday. I can't believe Thursday is already here. It just seems like the weeks just went by so fast. The episodes have been great. I've really been enjoying season 2 for the most part. I feel like quality-wise, they have kind of stepped up, and not stepped up, but kind of kept up with the high bar that they set in season 1, because season 1 was just almost perfection when it comes to quality storytelling and cinematography. But they kind of, it feels like Severance. It feels like that same kind of good quality here in season 2 that I remembered in season 1. But yeah, man, this season is absolutely whipping by. We just got through episode 9, the penultimate episode of season 2. We have one more episode left. And at least at the very least, the final episode, the last episode of season 2, this Thursday, is going to be 76 minutes in runtime. It's going to be a very, very long episode, probably hopefully to make up for the previous 2 very short episodes we have gotten. Episode 8 being only 37 minutes, I believe, and then this one, episode 9, only being 44. Definitely some of the shorter run times that we've seen in Severance history. So it's nice to get like a fully packed finale next week with, around an hour and 15 minutes of screen time, which will be absolutely great. But again, welcome everybody. Welcome to my awesome co-host, PM Philosophy. PM, I mean, can you believe we're already approaching episode 10?
I can't. It all went by so fast. But you know what they say, Sevies? Time goes by super fast when you're having fun. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But I already see the chat talking about the Twilight Zone. And let's begin by celebrating the fact that Mr. Jeremy Eisenfire did it again on his prediction video where he talked about the Twilight Zone and specifically that episode about the after hours. Not only did we see that it was actually about the Twilight Zone, but they used like the most important dialogue of that specific episode, which a lot of people were confused when Cobell said, "I'm looking for a gold thimble, Marsha, 9th floor." And of course, you knew it, right? Before it happened. So first, I want to celebrate that because I was super excited when I saw that. It was used so well too as the code phrase to get into the cabins. I thought that was like super, complex in a way, because when you are going into the cabins, you're about to be severed in order to give birth, right? And what we know about the Twilight Zone episode is, becoming someone else, that whole idea of duality. So I just was super excited for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. I mean, I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan. I know you're a huge Twilight Zone fan as well, as many people are in the chat. And I know I'm not the only one. I know I certainly am not the only one who saw the episode title and thought, oh man, this might be related to the Twilight Zone. And yeah, it was super interesting to see that it was. And like you mentioned, I feel like it was an incredibly clever usage of the inspiration of the Twilight Zone. It's not like they just kind of threw it in as a throwaway line, as dressing. They made it actually a part of the plot of the actual story. So I appreciate that. Anytime they throw in something like this, which is a kind of wink and a nod and homage to something that came before, it's nice to see it, that it's not just a throwaway line, that it actually has meaning and it has purpose. Like you said, in terms of being the secret code to be let in the back door of the birthing cabins for Jame Egan's numerous mistresses. One of Egan's. Yeah, one of Egan's, one of many of Egan's. Which again, I mentioned this in my breakdown video, which will be up on the channel tomorrow morning. Jame Egan, I feel like every time we see Jame Egan, every time he gets more screen time, he just gets creepier and creepier and creepier. Like super creepy, this guy. All of these Egans are super creepy. Like they remind me of the corporate America version of the Targaryens, pretty much, with all of the weirdness, the ancestral tendencies. Like they remind me of modern day corporate Targaryens. Even down to James' white hair. But yeah, Jame came off as super creepy in this episode, super distant, super cold. You can totally understand, or at least get a little bit of an idea as to why Helena turned out the way she turned out. I mean, being raised by a father like Jame Egan must have been hell on earth. Must have been absolute hell on earth. And I like when they kind of peel back some of these characters' layers a little bit more, like they did with Cobell in episode 8, giving us her whole backstory. Little scenes like we got with Helena at the beginning of this episode, showcasing some of the things that she might have went through as a child, being raised by Jame. It's nice getting these extra layers of context to give these characters more depth and more understanding for us as the audience. But overall, this was a good episode. I thought it was a pretty good episode. I mean, we got to check in with pretty much all of our main storylines, all of our main characters. We got some interesting reveals, nothing too big, but we definitely got some interesting reveals and some very interesting hints as to what even Cold Harbor might be, or at the very least, what its outcome might do to Gemma in particular. How she may not be able to survive 100% of Cold Harbor. So I do feel like it was an interesting episode. It was definitely a lot of setup for the finale, but they also gave us a little bit to chew on as well. So I was happy.
Yeah, I thought that it was, like you said, we checked in with most of our characters. Now, you and I discussed this on Thursday. We were disappointed that we didn't get to see Rickon, right? Our beloved. But that's okay. Maybe in the finale, we'll get to see what he has been up to. But it was a great episode. I think that there was so much too that I had to watch it a couple of times and focus on each storyline individually so that I could keep track of what was actually symbolically there. Because Severance does use so much symbolism, right? So I had to rewatch. And yeah, it was a super awesome episode. When you talk about Elena's father, something came to me, right? We know that Elena had that meeting with the board where she asked them, does my father consent to this? Is he okay with me doing this? That, to me, it seemed like maybe you don't live with your father. Maybe you hardly even speak to him. But now that we know that they live in the same mansion and they don't communicate, it's the board who communicates between both of them, it just makes it even more weird.
It does. It creates like even that more, even like a bigger degree of separation and detachment. Like this is just not how families are supposed to operate. Like this, it just seems so weird. They don't seem like a family at all. They do not come across like a father-daughter combination. Like it's super cold, it's super distant, super kind of analytic. It's not a family. They're definitely not a family. And again, you can see why Helena might have been a little messed up, why she did grow up a little messed up after growing up with him. I mean, who would grow up just completely normal with Jame Egan as a father? I don't think anybody would. But yeah, this was an interesting one. And again, Twilight Zone tie-in was super cool. Was that Twilight Zone episode where all the dummies come to life at night? Yes, Luke Starkiller. That was the episode of the Twilight Zone that this was referencing tonight as well. The After Hours, the title of this episode and the title of that episode. And yes, it follows the story of Marcia White, a young woman who is heading into a department store to try and find a golden thimble for her mother, only to find out that she has stepped into a very, very weird predicament, to say the least. And especially with the reveal at the end of the episode being completely earth-shadowing for her when she finds out who or what she really is. And that's one of the things that I think ties in very well to Severance, into the theme of Severance, paralleled with that episode, is it's not so much about this, the hidden ninth floor, which is very similar to this hidden testing room floor. There's all those surface level kind of connections. But when you look a little bit deeper, it's really more about the sense of identity and the sense of a loss of identity, or not knowing your identity, not being sure of your identity, is a huge part of that episode and of Severance as well. We look at Gemma, we look at the rest of the innies, all of them do kind of struggle in a sense with a case of mistaken identity, or not knowing their identity, not knowing who they are, not knowing where do they fit in this world, not feeling like regular humans. It really is, it's about your identity and not knowing that identity, not being sure of your identity, or having it kind of, the rug pulled out from underneath you in the last hour, like what happens to poor Marcia in the episode. It's definitely tied very much into identity, and that's why I really enjoy the parallels for Severance, because that so is the innies. Like, that's one thing they've always been searching for. Who are they, essentially? What are we? Where do we fit in?
Yeah. One thing that I thought was really interesting about the tie-in between that specific episode and Severance is that Marcia, the mannequin, is having difficulty coming to terms with the fact that she is a mannequin and that she's not a real human. But the woman who's selling her the gold thimble, so the woman that's explaining to her, we are not real people. We just pretend to be for a limited time. That's what was really interesting to me, because what we know about the innies and the outies is that the innies get to live for a limited time. Their time is always like on the clock, and once that clock strikes, 5 p.m. or the end of the workday, that's it. Your experience as a living human being is done, which is what they were trying to convey to Marsha the entire episode. So I thought the symbolism there was right on point with what an innie's life is. You're basically living and pretending to be human for a very specific amount of hours. And once those are up, they're up. You don't even get to choose, as we see with the retirement party. It's not you who chooses to retire, it's the Audi.
And that's the tragedy of it, isn't it? Because, you see these innies, and while on the surface, on the onset, it might not seem like they have a whole lot going for them, but, we've discussed and dived super deep into it in the past where in some cases, some of these innies or a lot of these innies have a certain degree of freedom that even their Audis don't have, like Helly and Helena, for instance. Helena might be the Audi. She might be the super powerful daughter and next in line for CEO of Lumen. But she doesn't have the kind of small basic freedoms that Helly does have, like the freedom to pursue your own heart, the freedom to love who you want, the freedom to cultivate real friendships among coworkers. It seems like that was something Helena was just never had the chance to grow up with, considering how she was kind of, crafted to be in this position of the next Lumen CEO. So you do get a sense where even though the innies don't have the control, they do have a certain degree of freedom that some of their Audis don't have. And I think, Helena in particular was very envious of Helly towards the end of season 1 and probably still is up until this point in season 2, seeing that there's that one thing that she has never been able to have. And especially someone like Helena, who has probably grew up having everything, incredibly rich, incredibly privileged. She's had every advantage in the world, yet the basic kind of things that every human wishes to feel and yearns for are the things that she's been denied her whole life, like love and friendships. So yeah, it's very interesting to see the kind of dichotomy there between the Audis and the innies, where, who is ultimately free? Where does the power really lie? But like you said, ultimately, the innies have no say as to when their life eventually ends, as to when they are going to die. It is ultimately up to the Audi. Once the Audi retires, chooses not to go back to work, at that point, that's it. It's over for the innie. They have no recourse. They have no chance to protest this. They just have to go along with it. So there is that sense of, they only have so much. The Audis can just end it anytime they want, which is unfortunate. And we see a little bit of that in this episode as well, in terms of one Audi threatening to end his innie, and that very same innie kind of asking to be ended after the way things kind of play out. And we're going to dive into all of that and more. But first, let me see who is in this awesome chat with us this evening. Welcome one, welcome all. Now, of course, it is Saturday, which means it is Sevi Saturday. Let's get this right. There we go. There's Sevi Saturday. We got to have that. It's not Sevi Saturday without the Sevi Saturday background, right? Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. We got Peach in the house. Welcome, Peach. We cannot wait another year for another season. This is outrageous. At this point, I hope it's only a year, actually. That was the thing about Severance. Season one came out almost 3 years, like two and a half years or so, a little over 2 years in between seasons. And there were a lot of factors to that, the writer's strike, COVID, a lot of things. It was just super bad timing for the industry. A lot of shows had extended hiatuses. But Severance had one of the longest ones I've ever seen, where season 1 and season 2 were legit well over 2 years apart from each other. And I don't envision that happening between season 2 and 3. I mean, the industry is back to normal. COVID has relatively under wraps. The industry seems to be functioning as well as it did before the pandemic. So I'm hoping that we're not going to have another 2+ year wait in between seasons 2 and 3. However, I am definitely probably at least anticipating a year. It'll probably at least be a full year before we get Severance season 3. It's unfortunate, but it just seems like TV series are taking incredibly long to produce these days, way longer than they used to just a mere 10 years ago, 10 years ago, even, when you used to have these seasons that had 20, 23, 24 episodes in a single season, and they came out every single year like clockwork. Like Lost, like 24, The Shield, Sons of Anarchy, Supernatural, all of these shows who had 20 plus episodes a season came out super quick. And here we are a few years later. It's taking a little bit longer to produce television. Now, of course, the quality of a show like Severance, you can kind of make some allowance and you can kind of understand why Severance might take a little bit longer than some other shows because of all of the care and quality that they do put into the show, the phenomenal cinematography, the phenomenal editing, the beautiful transitions. Severance is one of the most professionally produced series that I've ever seen on TV. It really does give you that kind of feature film vibe every single week, and you don't really feel like you're watching a TV episode. It's really good quality. So I can understand why Severance might take a little longer than others. They really want to take their time, and I imagine they want to keep that feeling of what Severance is going. You don't want to kind of cheapen that. You don't want to do less than. But yeah, I'm hoping that it'll be 1 year. I'm hoping for 1 year in between seasons 2 and 3, and not too much longer. Hopefully. Hopefully. But we shall see. We got Kiwi Skirt in the house. What is up, Kiwi? Good to see you. We got Ghost MKC. What is up, Ghost MKC? And I did see your chat earlier, Ghost MKC, and I thought it was a very, very interesting theory. And I like it. I actually really do like it. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. Once I'm done saying hi to the chat, I will bring up your comment back up. And I would love to get everybody's take on it, both in the chat and, of course, your take on it as well, PM, because Ghost MKC has a very interesting theory as to who he thinks Irving was talking to on those payphone calls, which, again, one of the most intriguing mysteries that we have been trying to find out ever since we first saw these phone calls happening. We know that whoever Irving is talking to, he's talking to them about Lumen, about losing his job. It's very kind of Lumen specific. So whoever it is definitely seems to be important and is probably going to be an intriguing character. But Ghost MKC came up with probably one of the best theories I've seen as to who could be on that phone call that I've seen in the fandom up until this point. So again, bravo to you, Ghost MKC, and we'll definitely gonna take a look at that here in a minute. We got Luke Starkiller in the house. What is up, Luke? Good to see you as well. We got Constance in the building. Welcome. We got Chris B in the house, like a short movie. It does kind of feel a little bit like a short movie. If you're referring to each episode of Severance, it is so well produced that it does kind of feel that way, for sure. We got Wayne in the house. What is up, Wayne? Good to see you. We got Danny Spanks in the building. What is up, Danny Spanks? We got the Jen, the teacher. Welcome, Jen, the teacher. We got Really Cool in the house. What is up, Really Cool? Always good to see you. I love these names. I love these clever names, like Really Cool. What's the other one? Mm-hmm. Toothless Paste. Like some really great names in the chat. Like S Drag Nasty. What is up, S Drag Nasty? Another good name. Love these. Love the ingenuity that you guys place into your screen names. It really is funny. We got Zombie Italian in the house. What is up, Zombie? Good to see you as well. We got Kings in the building. Welcome, Kings. Always good to see you as well, my friend. We got D-Wag in the house. What is up, Darren? Good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat. That's incredibly generous of you, my friend. Damn, Jeremy on cam. Chad mode, hail chat. Well, thank you so much for that, Darren. I've it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of requests for me to get on camera. It's always something I meant to do. I always meant to get on camera at some point. I kind of just fell into the routine of always being off camera. But I figured, why not? It's always something I meant to do. My awesome co-host is always on camera, and I figured it just looks a little better when you have two people on camera and as opposed to one avatar. And sometimes you can just connect a little bit better with people when they can see you and kind of see the the passion, the emotion when we dive into these awesome topics. So thank you so much, Darren. Very much appreciate the super chat. And yeah, I'll definitely be on camera for a good majority of the streams, for sure. Absolutely. Let's see what else we got. Scrolling down. Let me scroll down, see who else is here. I got my pal Xavier Anderson in the house. What is up, Xavier? Good to see you. Always good to see you, my friend. Always got some great takes on the show. Looking forward to hearing some of your thoughts and opinions on this episode. This was a pretty decent episode. It was a pretty wild episode that again, is setting a lot of things up for episode 10, but we did get some good things to dive into in this episode. So looking forward to seeing what each and every one of you guys thought about it. Looking forward to see what you guys are thinking. We got Ty in the house as well. What is up, Ty? Also, good to see you, my friend. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We got Ronald in the house. Welcome, Ronald. Good to see you as well. We got Megan Alyssa. Welcome, Megan. The scene where the nurse retrieves Gemma in the elevator at the end of episode 7 is also similar to one of the mannequins coming to get Marcia from the elevator in the after hours. Super true. That's a very good point. It's actually very similar because, yeah, she kind of changes back into the mannequin in the elevator, and you have to see them kind of pull her out of the elevator coming to get her. So actually, yeah, that's another very good parallel, another very good allegory for the Twilight Zone. So that's, yeah, good catch. Very good catch. I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's always cool to see these tie-ins. I'm always very intrigued to see, especially Twilight Zone tie-ins, because I am a massive, massive Twilight Zone fan. Chris B says, R.I.P. Helly R. She is now Helly E and in charge. This is true. This is true. We did see Helly and Milchick talking in this episode. And yeah, she, Milchick calls her Helly, Helly R. And she says, don't you mean Helly E? Which, again, essentially, yeah, she is Helly E. She is Helly E. But that was a good one. That was a good one. Wow, I've been listening to you for years. It's crazy seeing your face for the first time. When I first got here, I was wondering, who is that guy? I had to wait for you to talk. Well, thank you for that, Ty. Very much appreciate it, my friend. And yeah, Ty's been, you've been here for forever, my friend, diving into all of this awesome shows with us. And I very much appreciate you still hanging out here and supporting the channel. Awesome mod. Yeah, it was time. It was time. We got some requests for me to get on camera. I always try to accommodate whatever the chat says. And again, it was something that I always meant to do anyway. So figured, why not now? Why not now? I wish you'd eat them raw, said Samuel. Oh my God. Yeah, this was like super, super creepy. All right, let me say hi to a few more, and then we're going to dive in. I see Pam Jam down there as well. What is up, Pam Jam? And again, if I did miss anybody, super sorry. Big welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you so much all for joining us. I see Lacey in the house down there as well. Welcome, Lacey. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Awesome stuff, guys. Welcome to all of you. We also got another $2 super chat from D-Wag. Thank you so much, Darren. That is very much appreciative. I'd be mailing you and Rave the presents you guys soon. Okay, interesting. Well, thank you for that, my friend. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's always cool to still see what all of our comic book friends are getting into. I've known Darren from back since the comic book days when this show was a smaller comic book channel, just talking about independent comics and promoting some of our friends who are artists and creators. And still to this day, I have just packages of mail showing up that are from back then, where I'm receiving a book 2 years later, or a thank you from someone for bringing them onto the channel to promote their book. But yeah, thank you for that, my friend. I very much appreciate that. That is not necessary, but it is very much appreciated. Thank you, thank you. We got Kiwi Skirt. Oh, excuse me. We got Kings in the house for $2. Thank you so much, Kings. Jeremy looks how I thought he would. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be of what you expected, because it was mixed reactions. I mean, I saw a lot of flattering comments in the comment section for our last stream when I first went on camera, and again, very much appreciate each and every one of you who left those flattering comments. That was very, very nice of you. But yeah, there was, I think some people, they hear my voice and they're not quite sure what to expect, because I do still have that kind of tinge of that Northeastern accent, even though I've lost it a little bit. But yeah, I think some people just, they just don't know what to expect when you hear, and I think that's not just me, that's for everybody, especially where YouTube is concerned. If you spend so long watching a YouTube channel or listening to a YouTube channel, and that person has only been on an avatar for years and years and years, and all of a sudden, boom, they're on camera, it can be a little jarring. It can be a little bit weird. You don't know what to expect. So, and that was one thing I was thinking too. I had no idea, like, oh man, maybe people don't want me to go on camera, which is totally fine. But yeah, it's always interesting to see if the voice is what people expected, if the face matches the voice when people do finally see me, I guess. But thank you. I mean,
okay, I have to stop him because he's not gonna take the compliment, girls.
No.
Sevi, ladies, I saw all the compliments. They were saying Jeremy's so handsome, he's so cute, and he hates compliments. But I saw them, and I'm gonna acknowledge them. They thought you were super cute. When I first saw Jeremy, like he sounds so nice, right? Like his voice, but then like he looks like so intimidating, like
Oh
like
God,
a big
what?
scary guy, like super cute, right? Super handsome, yes, but like intimidating. But he's the nicest person, and I think that that's like the best combination you could have.
Yeah.
But I saw your comments, ladies, so I will acknowledge them.
Well, thank you. I do. I very much appreciate the. I do appreciate the flattering comments. That does feel good. Very much appreciated. But yeah, it's I'm just me. I'm not just me. Good old me. The dude playing the dude disguised as another dude, as I say. But again, it was very nice to see all the welcoming comments that we saw in the last stream. So I do echo what PM says. Thank you. Appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. Let's see. We got Kiwi Skirt. Woohoo! Still going strong. Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you so much, Kiwi Skirt. Yes, Kiwi Skirt is another one who has been here from pretty much the beginning when we first started diving into From and all these other shows. And here we are, 19 months later. Kiwi Skirt still a member. Wow, that is incredibly generous of you, Kiwi. You've always been one of the biggest supporters of the channel ever since the early days. And I very much appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who takes the time to come and hang out with us for a little bit, whether it's the first time you're ever catching one of our streams or whether it's the 100th stream you've caught from us. I do very much appreciate anyone and everyone who does choose to come and hang out for a bit. But those of you that have been here since day one, like the Kiwi Skirts, the Ties, the Xaviers, all of you, you guys know who you are. I very much appreciate each and every one of you for all of the support you guys have shown over the years. It really does mean a lot. It really, really does mean a lot. And speaking of that support from the awesome Kiwi Skirt, has just gifted 5 memberships. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 memberships gifted from the awesome Kiwi Skirt. That is incredibly generous of you. And again, a big welcome to everybody who was a recipient of any of those memberships. You are all welcome here. And of course, looks like Darren Wagner received a membership. Clem Cumber received one of the memberships. That's another great fucking name. Clam Cumber. Okay. Hey, the ingenuity is impressive. It is impressive. We got Miss Moonlight, who is now a member. Katie Joe is now a member, and Scammy is now a member now as well. Welcome one, welcome all. So glad to have each and every one of you here. Of course, for all of the members, the custom Severance emojis are at your leisure anytime you want to use them. And anyone who is a member, if you have any requests for some new Severance emojis or new any kind of emojis that you would like to see, I always take requests from the members for new emojis. Leave your suggestions in the comment section after the stream ends, and I will definitely get it made up. But thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kiwi Skirt, for the gift of the 5 memberships and for 19 months of being a member. That is incredibly generous. And, so thankful. So thankful to each and every one of you. Awesome stuff, guys. Awesome stuff. All right, now let's dive into this a little bit. Shall we? Let's see. Now, okay, episode 9. Good episode, I thought. Solid episode. I think I gave it a 7.5 on my previous rating when we did our after show the very night of the episode. I believe I gave it around a 7.5. I think my rating will probably go up a little bit by the time this stream is over when we do our final ratings at the end of the streams. But looking back at the episode, after you have a chance to see these episodes a little bit more than once, and you go back and you start to see some of these scenes that you do like, some of the scenes you don't like a little bit more, you do tend to change your score. At least I do. I tend to maybe change my score a point or a half a point every once in a while. But this episode had a pretty interesting beginning where, again, we got to see a little bit of the insight that Helena Egan goes through on a day-to-day basis. I mean, living in this beautiful mansion must be great, don't get me wrong, but a mansion does not make a home. People make a home. Memories make a home. That's the kind of things that make homes. And this thing just screams like detachment, just screams of detachment. Everything that Jame is, everything that he kind of stands for, he just seems incredibly cold and distant every time you see him and hear him speaking to Helena. And even super weird and creepy too, where the first thing Helena says to him, "Aren't you going to join me to eat?" And he says, "No, I'm going to watch." Watch? You're going to watch? Like, no, I'm not hungry. I'm just going to hang out and have some coffee. No, he says, "I'm going to watch." Why? And he specifically watches her eat her eggs, almost in a little bit of a disappointing fashion, as he's upset that they're not raw eggs as well. So what was your first impression on Jame Eagan, in this scene? Like, what was your impression of him overall in this scene and in the show in general? And let us know in the chat what you guys think as well. What do you guys think of when you see Jame Eagan? Do you guys see the creepy dude that I do, or do you guys see something else?
You know what? We see the same thing. He's creepy. Like, there's just no way that I think any human can look at him and say, "Hey, that's a totally normal guy." Like, he's just a cool dude, right? Like, he is creepy, that's for sure. The line about, "I'm not gonna eat, I just want to see you eat them." It's almost like a symbolism to what Elena's life has been under her father's um, thumb. It has been just supervised, micromanaged to the point where, can you imagine having breakfast and all you're trying to do is just have breakfast, go to work, and somebody's micromanaging what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you're eating it. They're not eating it. However, they're micromanaging what you're doing because it's displeasing to them. And he had this face, this exact face that you have in the screenshot the entire time. So it's like, I didn't even do anything. I just woke up, had breakfast, and I'm already a disappointment, a huge disappointment. He's just like the worst dad. And I was thinking about what you said when it came to Elena being jealous of Helly. I can 100% understand that. However, it makes me think about Sevis. Can you imagine being Elena, dating somebody, and then bringing them home to this? To your father? I mean, could you even imagine meeting somebody you're trying to like date, you bring them home to dad, and this is dad? Like, of course she's not dating. Of course she's not finding love.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's so warm and caring, isn't he? Yeah, it really is. He's super cold, super distant, and yeah, I mean, like, you can imagine what this must be like to wake up to this kind of vibe every day. Like, when you wake up in the morning, your morning kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day, and how that day is going to go. And I can only imagine what kind of tone is set every morning in the Egan house. Like, it's almost like, how do I recover from breakfast for the rest of the day? Like, it's so bad, it's so traumatizing. And I like what Mike says here as well, and I do agree with this. Is probably accurate. He's probably watched her since childhood to make sure she eats everything perfectly. He does seem like that kind of guy, because we do see her kind of carefully split the boiled egg down, kind of evenly spread it out from each piece, in a nice little equidistance from each other. And yeah, it's like you get the sense like it's some kind of ritual for her to please him every morning. And even though she's doing everything kind of perfectly, he's still disappointed that they're not raw eggs, as Kier used to eat. So yeah, it's like you said, it's just the ultimate feeling of disappointment right from breakfast, right early on. That kind of stuff is going to be a bit of a damper on the rest of the day. And maybe that's why Helena herself is always the way she is, I guess. Yeah, he's a dried out husk bag. He is a dried out husk bag. He really is. And I do agree with this as well, Crispy. I want to buy that plate, that Lumen plate. Yeah, that plate was beautiful. That plate was absolutely beautiful. I would definitely buy that plate too. I don't know if I'd ever use it.
Okay, but what do you think is happening in the plate scene? That is not a positive plate scene. There's definitely symbolism in there, because it's two Puritan women holding back somebody that looks like Hamilton.
Someone that looks like Hamilton, yeah. Yeah,
it's like torturing him.
It is a little bit dark, to say the least. Beautifully crafted, but a bit of a dark depiction of what is actually happening on that plate. And I guess, having a plate like that kind of is very indicative of who the Egans are, of who Jame Eagan is. You can totally expect someone like him to have that kind of plate, I guess. So it does kind of fit for who they are. But no, that's a very interesting observation. That it's not a happy plate. It's not a happy scene that is being portrayed. Very true. Very true. And Luke Starkiller, I must say, I do agree with you on this. He does look a little bit like Malcolm McDowell from Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange is an incredibly weird and twisted movie. Like it's just such a weird movie, very trippy, very LSD kind of vibes the movie kind of gives off. And yeah, he does look a little bit like this is like, yeah, he does look like if that Malcolm McDowell, if on Clockwork Orange, if that character would have grown up, not Malcolm McDowell himself, but if that character would have grown up, he'd probably look exactly like this, exactly like Jame Eagan. So yeah, he's a creep, says S-Drag Nasty. He's an abusive father, says Vanessa M. And he is. I feel like that's definitely been proven as well. He definitely is an abusive father. He's verbally abusive, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was physically abusive as well. The guy seems like he doesn't have the best temper. We see the whole fetid moppet reaction at the end of season 1. Fetid moppet. Doesn't say anything else to her. Doesn't even say you're a fetid moppet. He just says fetid moppet. It's just super weird. Like you do get the sense that this guy's very abusive for sure.
He won't even give her the your. It's just like you have to come. You have to come to that conclusion. This fetid moppet.
Fill in the blanks. All you get is fetid moppet. You don't get a your. You're a fetid moppet. No, you don't get that much. He's such a creep. Such a creep. I agree. Jame is so weird, like a robot. He is a little bit robotic. And I think his voice sounds a little bit robotic too, as well. And that was one thing I noticed at the very beginning of this episode. Right when Helena first kind of steps into the room, he says, "A momentous day." And it's like the dude's voice is just super creepy. It is super robotic. He not only acts like a robot, he kind of sounds like one. The way he said "momentous day," like it gave me the chills, I guess. It's a momentous day. Man, like the dude just gets creepier and creepier every time he's on screen. Like shit. What a momentous day.
I can't take it.
Just what a mess. Like this dude is not right. This dude is not right. Really cool. He's a monster. Yeah, he is a monster. And yeah, definitely probably the helicopter parent watching everything Helena does. So warm and caring. Dried out husk bag. That might be my favorite description of him thus far that I've seen in the chat. He's a dried out husk bag. Like that might be the best one yet. Good stuff. Good stuff. And super pale, like copy paper, almost like his hair. It's almost like his skin is, a similar tone to his hair. He is super pale. This guy, absolutely.
Okay, hey, when did it become like the roast?
Yeah, it became the roast of Jame Eagan. That should be the name of the stream. The roast of Jame Eagan. We are doing the roast of Jame Eagan, ladies and gents. Throw your roasts in the chat. Whatever you guys think of Jame Eagan, whatever jokes you have, throw them in the chat. We'll make the next 5 minutes or so the Jame Eagan Severance roast. The roast of Jame Eagan himself. Because if anybody deserves to get roasted, it's this guy. It's this freaking weirdo. That is for sure. And he does look a little bit like the Emperor from Star Wars and speaks a little bit like him too. He does have a little bit of a Palpatine-esque kind of vibe to him a bit. So I can see what you're saying. I can see what you see there, Jen. He does have a little bit of that Palpatine vibe for sure. A little bit of Emperor Palpatine, the Darth Sidious, as it were. I'd give this episode an 8.5 or even 9, since I gave episode 4 of season 2 a 10 and episode 3 and 9. Ooh, interesting. Solid scores as well. And yeah, we're definitely it'll be interesting when we get to the end and we start scoring this episode again and see how our scores might have differed from our first after show that we did on Thursday. Chris B.S. says, I see him controlling Helena. Absolutely. I see him controlling every aspect of Helena's life, probably. absolutely. I see decades of inbred family, and I swear, and that's why I kind of liken whenever I see the Egans, they do kind of remind me of, and for anybody who's a Song of Ice and Fire or a Game of Thrones fan, the Eakins do kind of remind me of your corporate America version of House Targaryen, of the Targaryens themselves, even down to the creepy looks, the white hair, the ancestral tendencies, the just how weird they are. They do come off a little bit Targaryen-esque, a modern, corporate Targaryen family. So I definitely see the the decades of inbreeding that might have happened along the Egan line, because we do know that Kier himself was a product of incest, and we have no idea how far back that product of incest goes, even before Kier was born, and if any of it took place after Kier was born with his descendants as well. We have no idea if it continued to happen. But yeah, Jame is a creep, and he just sees women as vessels to deliver his children. And again, we do get that other side of Jame in this episode as well, right? When we get to the end and we finally get to the birthing cabin, we find out that not only is he a monumental creep, but yes, I mean, it seems like he's getting tons of women pregnant, sneaking them into this birthing cabin to have his illegitimate child that he probably never acknowledges once in their whole life, children that he might even send directly to the Myrtle Egan School for Girls to just exploit them as child labor, which we know is something that Lumen does. We actually get a pretty good look, not a good look, but we get a look at just how kind of insane and how kind of this system is very much always turning in terms of the child labor that Lumen does utilize. And I think we see a little bit of that through Miss Wong's POV in this episode as well. But yeah, super creepy. Super creepy. Jame Egan is a super weirdo. Only person as weird as he is the Doctor, who looks like a skinny Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Doctor, yeah. I mean, give me Matt Smith's Doctor over this guy any day, though. At least Matt Smith is cool, a lot cooler than this guy. Yeah, Clockwork Orange, classic, absolute classic. It really, really is. Jame is more like a evil mentor. Yeah, he doesn't really come off like a father, right? Like that is the vibe he does kind of give off. He doesn't really feel like a father. He does have that kind of evil mentor, mastermind kind of vibe for sure. For sure. But yeah. Just crazy, absolutely crazy. I know eggs are high, but Helena cutting it into fours is ridiculous. Indeed. But yes, he is a good actor. He's intimidating. And that's one thing I think you and I have always very much appreciated about the show. When an actor can invoke this kind of ire, this kind of hatred for a character, that tells you that the actor is doing a damn good job in their role. And that's one thing I can say about Severance, through and through, whether it's the protagonist or the antagonist roles. These actors are killing it in their positions. Milchick might be my favorite actor on the show. Trammell Tillman as Milchick might be my favorite performance. He's not my favorite character per se, but I think his performance as Milchick might be my favorite performance on the show. But yeah, all of these actors and actresses are absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, like you said, when you are having this kind of ire for a villain, it tells you that actor is doing a good job.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And not only that, right? But you want to know more about him. He's not just a creepy old guy like the dentist, right? The way that he says things, right? Even when he called at the end of the episode, we see him walk into the Severance floor and he chooses to say to Hallie, he calls her my Hallie. You tricked me. So you want to know more about this man because he calls his own child a fetid moppet, but he calls his child's Annie my Hallie. And what is the trick, right? That is the question. And I have been thinking about that. What does he mean? Like, you tricked me. What does that mean, right? He's very, I don't know. He says very little, but you can tell that there is darkness behind what he says. Even the line of, I wish you would eat them raw. It's just, it's off-putting, but you want to know more about him. So that tells me that he's doing an amazing job.
It does. I mean, again, and it is one of those things where, yes, the guy's super creepy. You know, you definitely don't like the guy. You're never going to root for him. But yeah, it's like, shit, I can't help but want to know a little bit more about him. So yeah, you're 100% right. Well, now that I think of it, yeah, I do. I do want to learn more about Jame Egan. I do want to see what was his childhood like. How did he grow up? What was his Egan father like? Was it similar to him? Is that why he was molded in this way? I imagine it was probably along those lines, where his father was probably very hard on him, just like he's being hard on Helena. So yeah, no, I do totally agree. It does make you want to peel back the layers a little bit more on Jame Egan and find out just what is beneath the surface. Who is this character? Who is this person that is, creating such a very interesting kind of vibe around him? The just his overall demeanor, super strange, super creepy, super weird, super distant. But yeah, it's you would like to learn a little bit more about him. Yeah, him and Milchick would have wonderful conversations. They probably would. That's actually a really good point. When you think about the kind of vocabulary that Milchick uses on the show, super sophisticated, super smart. Jame Egan does have a similar way of speaking, not as good as Milchick, I don't think, but he does have a similar kind of way of speaking where his vocabulary is also sometimes words that you would not normally hear the average everyday person speaking. So yeah, I think they would. I agree there. I think they would have some interesting conversations, those two, for sure. For sure. Why does everyone have blue eyes? Maybe something in the water? Maybe. I mean, we see the water towers all over the place. There are some very interesting theories actually going around that some people think that these water towers are there for a very specific reason. We see the Lumen logo literally has the water drip of it. Yeah, what's up with the water towers? Why are they making such a point, such an emphasis on these water towers and showing us them all the time, whether it's in the regular show, the orientation video? The water tower was also speaking just like the building was. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going on with the water. I guess I need to see some more foreshadowing in the actual show for the water for me to think that there's something going on there. But there are some really good theories out there in terms of what Lumen is doing with the water, what they're doing to the town and the population of Kier, because they do essentially own and control the entire town of Kier. So who knows if they wanted to, who knows what they could do with the water, what they could put into it for some kind of weird experiment to test on a mass population. Like Lumen could really do anything. They've got all of these means at their disposal. And we certainly know they have no qualms about heading into a town and just completely mining it dry for its resources and even for its people, which we've seen happen to Cobell's hometown. So yeah, I mean, I would not want to live in the town of Kier. I mean, I don't know about you guys. Let me know in the chat. And what about you as well, PM? If you were a normal citizen, would you ever want to live in the town of Kier?
I would not. However, we need to take into consideration, do we have a choice?
True.
What is this world like, right? We might be living in a world, like a Severance world, where the Egans control so much that you don't really have a choice. Things that are affordable or homes that are community-based, like Mark's community-based home, where all the houses look the same. Maybe, you don't really have a choice. Maybe they are making things affordable. And if you think about corporations, that's how you get to the population, by providing services that they have to have, right? And so by building communities, building homes, I would want to know, do I have a choice? If I have a choice, then obviously it's a no, right?
Yep.
However, I love the drama. I love the drama. So I probably would. I would want to be right in between Marks and Kovalvik. Yeah, I would want to live like right in the middle of Marks and Kovalvik so that I could like be privy to all of the drama.
That would be kind of front row seat, wouldn't it, for all of the crazy, insane drama that goes on, in the town, in the show. Yeah, I mean, that is a good point. I guess if it's a matter of just full on choice, then yeah, definitely not. But it seems like a lot of the Lumen employees are living in, all of this Lumen specific town housing where Mark lives. We know even Dylan and Irving live in a similar kind of complex. So yeah, it's almost like they have this whole town kind of tailor-made, tailor-crafted to serve Lumen, from the town all the way up to the parking lot. Like, it's all kind of built to cater to Lumen. And it just, it shows you the immense kind of power and that they do wield in this town in particular, for sure. Jame is one of the statues in the Perpetuity Wing come to life. I mean, he does kind of look a lot like his statue. You see his statue in season 1, and the dude does look a lot like his statue, and he even has those wax-like features. So maybe. Do we think he was the same guy in the hallway from episode 1? I don't know. The other guy looked like he had dark hair and was created as the same guy as a shadow mark. I think it might have been a shadow mark too as well, Ghost MKC, because as you mentioned, I don't remember any white hair. I do remember that guy's hair being darker. The one little kind of, we get a small glimpse of someone standing in the hallway when Mark is making his way to the wellness center in episode 1. And yes, a lot of people do tend to think that that was one of the shadow twins that we see in episode 4 that guide our MDR employees to Woe's Hollow. And I tend to think that might be it as well, because I do think those shadow twins were created right there on the Severance floor. And I think they were created by Optics and Design, and not just created, 3D printed maybe even, because we know Optics Design is very well into creating things via the 3D printing models that they have. And considering how kind of basic and how kind of one-dimensional these shadow twins were, it didn't look like they could speak. It looks like all their only function was to stand and point. So that leads me to believe that they themselves might have been 3D printed right by Optics and Design on the Severance floor. And if that is the case, that would explain even more, or at least would make at least a little bit more sense as to why we see one of them on the Severance floor in episode 1. So I agree. I do tend to think that was one of these shadow twins there. But
I disagree.
Okay.
I'm
awesome.
just going to play like a different point of view, right?
Devil's advocate. I love that. Love it.
I think that it was the security guard.
Ooh.
When I looked at that, I like zoomed in, and he looked like he was wearing the exact outfit that the security guard who Regabi killed was wearing. He was wearing that suit with the white shirt and the tie, and his hair was also dark. So while he looked like Mark, he didn't quite look like Mark. I zoomed in, and that looked, compared to the security guard, like it could potentially be him.
Mm.
And if we know that Gemma was supposed to have died, but we see Gemma alive, then why not the security guard? He was supposed to be dead, but potentially they revived him. They're using him, or they're experimenting on him. I thought it looked like Grainer, yes.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's definitely just as plausible as it being one of the shadow twins. Absolutely. I mean, it seems like death is not a finality here on this show. Like you said, you mentioned Gemma, perfect example. We have no idea if he is really dead. I think we're meant to believe he's dead after seeing him get whacked in the head with that bat. But, this is the world of Severance, after all. And this is the company of Lumen. Who knows what other kind of weird technology that they may have to keep a human alive. And even in this episode, when Mark kind of calls in and is trying to call out of work for the day, and he's kind of using the excuse of his nosebleeds, and he just wanted to be sure, so he went and got himself checked out. Even Milchick tells him, like, no, we'll send you a car. You should be under Lumen care. And that tells you they feel like they are experts in every single field, even the medical field. So yeah, that's I think that could definitely make sense. I think it could definitely be a possibility where it could have been Granger, standing there in that hallway. I think that's a good theory. I think that's a good theory as any. Because we also hear Cobell in the preview, a preview that I thought was going to be in episode 9, but looks like it's going to be in episode 10. The little snippet of dialogue that we hear from Cobell saying either he's or she's still alive. A lot of people did seem to think that he's still alive was referring to Granger. I saw a lot of those comments in my comment section a few weeks back when I did a prediction video on it. And a lot of people tend to think that Granger is still alive for some reason. And who knows, maybe he could be. Maybe he could be. But again, it's, unless you see a body get completely buried or destroyed, death never seems to be final on this show, for sure. Yeah, maybe it's Granger. Maybe it is him. Maybe it is him. Or who knows? Who knows? Maybe it's somebody else entirely. You never know. Yeah, Grainer and Cobell. Yeah, they did seem like they had a weird kind of thing, didn't they? Because even in season 1, when they were retrieving Petey's chip, and they finally kind of understood what happened with the reintegration. You hear Granger say to Cobell, "Let's celebrate tonight." Like, you got the sense that those two might have been a little. I mean, what do you guys think, chat? And what do you think as well, PM? Do you think Grainer and Cobell were an item?
Excellent question. And I love this. Chat, Sevis, the Sevis know all, so they will probably know if they were or not. However, let's not forget Sevis. Let me make the argument for Hamilton. Let's not forget Hamilton. Hamilton was so cool. I mean, he has that cool line. He has the pizzazz, the flair. Um, Come tame these tempers, assholes. Like, we have to be on his side. We don't want Cobell and Granger. We want Cobell and Hamilton. He's so cool.
I do agree. I do agree. If it comes down to like choosing one or the other, I'm choosing Hampton every time, every single time. Like just like you said, for that one line at the end of the that one line at the end of the episode was more than enough for him to kind of just win me over just with that one, as you just mentioned. Come tame these tempers, assholes. The guy is just, I mean, for an ether addict, he seems to be an honorable one. And what he did here was honorable, and it was selfless, kind of staying behind to hopefully slow whoever is in this car down to buy Cobell a little bit more time to get away. He is essentially, potentially, maybe even sacrificing himself here in order to give Cobell more room to escape. And that's very noble at the end of the day, whether you like the guy or hate the guy. I mean, can totally understand either or. He did do a very noble thing here. He did do a very honorable and selfless thing here, where he was willing to sacrifice his life, essentially, to make sure Cobell got away. So if we're rooting for anyone, Granger or Hampton, yeah, I am rooting for him. Like, he's definitely my favorite of the two, for sure. But you got to tell me, which way do you go with Granger? Do you think he and Cobell were an item or not?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Of course they were. Of course they were. I think that you could see the dynamic between Cobell and him, and the way that he said, "Let's celebrate." Why would you celebrate with a coworker? There is absolutely no reason for you to celebrate with a coworker.
Yeah.
So it seems like he was in on whatever it is that she was doing. He probably even knew that it was her technology, because he was willing to take the chip and to get it analyzed. Somebody who is dedicated to Lumen, who is a good employee of the Lumen company and fears the family, the Egan family, wouldn't have done it. However, why would you have done that for her? You would do that for her if there was something more. And I do see that the Sevis are saying that she's definitely a looker, and she is. This episode, we got a lot of close-ups of Cobell, and she is gorgeous. She is beautiful. She does have, those beautiful blue eyes. As to the blue eye question, however, sometimes I think, are we looking too deeply? Because I listened to the podcast, and when I listened to the official Severance podcast, they did talk about Natalie. When Natalie was speaking to the board, a lot of us said the board is in her head. Well, Natalie, the actress, and Ben Stiller had a whole podcast, and she said no, she's not. She's just listening to the board and doing her job, and she wants to keep her job. Therefore, she tries not to get too empathetic with Milchick. The actress herself said that her character Natalie leans towards her white side. So the Sevis were correct once again. Natalie is of mixed race, and her actress said that this is the character's motivation. She's leaning towards this because it would help her with the company and keeping her job. Therefore, yes, Natalie is not the board. It's just a job for her.
Mhm. And I think that does make more sense. And those podcasts that you mentioned, the after episode podcasts, they can be very invaluable to give you information that you just don't get if you only watch the episode sometimes. And I'm living proof of that. I didn't watch a lot. I didn't listen to a lot of the podcasts, and you learn some things in there that give you some added context to some of these scenes. If you're left with maybe wondering how this scene is supposed to be interpreted, sometimes they'll go over it and tell you exactly what they were going for, at least. And I do agree with you. I think sometimes we as fans, whenever we're watching mystery style shows or shows that have that mystery aspect, even if it's not a full on mystery box show like From is, even just shows that have that mystery aspect to it. Sometimes, and I do it myself all the time. I'm more guilty of this than probably anybody else. Sometimes you tend to kind of just look a little bit too deep into things that aren't really meant to be looked deeper at. And I think that is just how these shows kind of play with you, how these shows mess with your brain a little bit, and they challenge you. And I do like being challenged when I watch a show. And that is something that I've been kind of trying to train myself when I watch episodes of Severance or anything that has that mystery aspect to it. I'm trying to tell myself, okay, what should I be spending more time on looking deeper at? And what should I learn to kind of ignore? That is just set dressing. That is just scene dressing. That is just background information. Because yes, some of the stuff that we see on Severance, a lot of the stuff that we see on Severance is going to mean a little bit deeper. It's going to have some foreshadowing for other events, but there is every once in a while, there's going to be those aspects where we look super deep into something and it ends up being nothing at all. And how many times did that happen to us with From in season 3 last year? Like, holy cow, how I cannot count how many times where we as the fandom we're diving super deep into certain aspects of an episode of From, and it turned out to be literally nothing, like something that the writers never even intended us to take a deeper look at, like the whole Fatima opening the door thing. Writers never even intended for that to be a thing, but it's a very interesting aspect because that's kind of the state of mind that shows like this put you in, where you're constantly looking for a deeper meaning inside everything you see. Some things are going to have that deeper meaning, but not some things just won't sometimes. And that's the fun of the show, trying to decide what to pay closer attention to and what to kind of let fall by the wayside. It does challenge you as an audience member, especially audience members like us who tend to kind of dive into these shows and try to dissect every little aspect. Like I know all of you guys do in the chat, like we do. We tend to look a little bit deeper than your average fan. So I think we can sometimes be a little bit more susceptible to kind of going down that rabbit hole when maybe it is only just a rabbit hole. But again, that is some of the fun of the show for me. I love trying to decide what should I look at, what should I not look at.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I see that the Sevies are all agreeing, right? Some people are mentioning the egg and mentioning our nature, quant solar. This is an excellent point. That's human nature to look for meaning in life, especially our belief system.
Exactly.
Ben Stiller actually made a comment about this.
Oh,
So
wow.
in one of the previous episodes about the innies, he said it's like life itself. When you come into this life, you don't really know what the purpose of it is. You're trying to figure everything out, right? And what gives you purpose is believing that there is purpose in life. If you don't believe in anything, then it could seem random and it could seem like there is no purpose. Why am I alive? What am I supposed to do? What values should I have? What is the right way to be a human being? So I absolutely agree with you, Consoler. Human nature is to look for purpose. Now, we must be very careful because we see an excellent example of that with the Egans. When somebody is looking for purpose and they are lost, they don't have that within themselves, within their family or community, you can be taken by a cult or even a corporate cult like the Egans, where they tell you that you have purpose, that you have belonging. And that's going to make sense to you because you don't find it anywhere else. And I think that that's what's happening, what they are trying to institute with all of this religious talk.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. Yeah, I could totally see that being the case because you do get that kind of sense of this religious undertone very, very prevalent in this show in particular. Just the way Lumen is run, the way these people speak, the way they kind of conduct themselves on a day-to-day basis. It is more of a religious kind of faction. So no, I totally 100% agree with that. And you can see it. You can definitely see it. And yeah, as Constance says, theories are fun, creative exercise, and they are. And that's one thing. That's why it's one of my kind of catchphrases. You know, don't be afraid to throw on that tinfoil hat. Don't be afraid to kind of dive into that rabbit hole every once in a while. It is fun to do these things every once in a while, to go a little bit crazy and break out the tinfoil. There's nothing wrong with that. And like you said, it is a creative exercise. It gets you thinking. It gets you start to wonder, okay, what should I pay attention to? What should I not pay attention to? Where could this lead me? Where could that rabbit hole lead me? It is a creative exercise. I 100% agree with you there. There's nothing wrong with theorizing. But one thing I do love about this show is how it challenges me to try and theorize in a way that might make more sense within the confines of the show. And then, you know, that can sometimes be a little bit tough when you have all of these mystery aspects and a lot of these things do look like you want to dive a little bit deeper into them. It challenges you. And I do love shows like this that genuinely challenge me, where I go away from the episode and I'm genuinely kind of sitting there thinking about the episode for like 30 minutes after it ends, before I even do anything else. Like I'm still just sitting down, just thinking about what I just watched and process it. And what were some of the deeper meanings? What were some of the underlying messages that this director, that this writer was trying to impart on the audience? Because there always is. There's always a deeper meaning to almost every one of these episodes. And it's fun to look at that deeper meaning. And I know that's something that we love doing here and something that you guys in the chat are super good at as well. I mean,
It's so much fun, and it gives me an idea, Jeremy.
Oh, okay.
Constant Thomas, you are 100% correct. It's a lot of fun. Maybe after Severance is over, we can have a live stream where we come out with our craziest, like most tinfoil theories of Severance. Like you don't have to have a base for it. You don't have to have facts behind it. Just come and give us like your most insane theory. I think that would be so much fun, Constance, because you are right. That is the fun of it. And I do see a comment by Faith and Repentance. I don't know if you see it, Jeremy, but it's a beautiful comment. It's a comment that I know that Jeremy would very much appreciate.
Oh, wow. Yes, I do think I found it. Wow. Thank you so much, Faith and Repentance. And Faith has been another one, been super, super supportive of the channel. Very much appreciate you. I hope I got the right one. Is this the one you meant? I think this is the one you meant. Yeah. You all helped give me belonging when I was coming out of a dark place and long illness. Thank y'all. Much love. Hit the like button. Wow. That is incredibly generous of you to say, Faith. Like that does really warm our hearts. One of the things that we love doing on these streams is we do like providing a place of entertainment for people who want to just come and just hang out for a little bit. But it's also escapism for a lot of people as well. Like you yourself know probably as well as anybody. And I myself know as well. There's been multiple times where I have sought my own escapism through this channel, through these discussions. You know, you never know what people are going through in their day-to-day life. You never know what kind of struggles, what kind of hardships people are going through on a daily basis. And a lot of people do have a lot of, you know, shit that they're dealing with. So if this channel, if these streams, these discussions can provide anybody, even just one single person, an ounce of escapism for just a little bit of time to forget about all the dark shit that's happening around us. That means more to me than anything. You can't put a dollar amount on that. No super chat, no monetization will ever mean more than that to me than hearing a comment like this. Because yeah, that's what it's about at the end of the day. Having a place where you can come, kind of just hang out, kick your feet up for a little bit, forget about how stressful the workday was, forget about whatever is going on in your life, and just have some fun with some people that are all diving into the same show as you. So I very much appreciate this, Faith. This does mean the world to me. This is what the channel is ultimately striving to achieve. It's not about views. It's not about monetization. You know, all that stuff is great. Don't get me wrong. But if people are having fun, if people are genuinely enjoying the discussions, that is the ultimate goal of the channel, to provide a place where people can just come and hang out. So I very much appreciate that, Faith. Thank you very much. That does mean a lot. That definitely does mean a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Awesome stuff, guys. Awesome stuff. And we do have the greatest chat in the world. That's one thing, PM's always pointing it out. The Sevies in the chat, you guys know all, and you do. You guys catch stuff that even we miss from time to time, which is, we try to catch everything we can, but even you guys will stump us every now and again. And it does show just how awesome the chat that we have assembled here really is. Like, you guys dive super into these shows. You're super knowledgeable on them. And it usually always does create a very good discussion as well. So thank you. Very much appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. Farewell to Mini Milkshake. I will miss her sociopathic ways. Now, I guess that's an interesting question that we can also ask each and every one of you in the chat, and you as well, PM, because I know how you are in particular a little bit of a fan of our Mini Milkshake, as you well should be. She is pretty awesome. She is pretty awesome, and she's an intriguing character, I guess you can say. Like, everything Mini Milkshake has been through, everything she continues to be put through, she's a very interesting character. And in this episode, we finally see her reach her graduation for her Wintertide Fellowship program, which we're not quite sure exactly what that means. But I'm wondering, is this going to be the last that we see of Mini Milkshake? Is Mini Milkshake really going to be gone? I guess that's the question. What do you guys think in the chat? And what do you think as well, PM? Do you think this was the last time we are going to see Mini Milkshake? Is Miss Wong gone for good? Is she ever going to return to the show? Or was this episode her kind of final farewell? Did we see the end of Mini Milkshake in this episode? I wonder. That's one thing I'm wondering. Will we ever see Mini Milkshake again? What do you think?
This is very difficult for me because I am such a fan of Mini Milkshake. Spooky. I am such a fan of Mini Milkshake. She's such a wonderful character because you get to see the indoctrination of the youth through her. Now, when it comes to Mini Milkshake, I really hope that Mr. Milkshake takes that new found courage and then goes after Mini Milkshake and saves her. Because if we recall, during this episode, when he does this to Mini Milkshake, he graduates her from the program ahead of time because she didn't even know, right? And she hasn't completed the time. She makes sure to say that. That was before he had the interaction with Mr. Drummond, where he very clearly understood, I am less than, you don't respect me, and on top of it, you treat me badly. So I would very much hope that he would rescue Mini Milkshake and that we would be able to see her again. Now, in the podcast, they discuss this specific scene. And they say this was Mr. Milkshake's, Ben Stiller said, this was Mr. Milkshake taking control of his future in the company. Because he understood that Mini Milkshake was working against them. So that is something that he understood. And this was his choice. So now that we know that, yes, you do have to make a sacrifice. So he didn't make that up. He makes a lot of things up, but not that specific thing. However, they said it didn't have to be her toy.
That's yes.
Mr. Milkshake chose that. Yes. And he was taking control of his future in the company because she was working against them. And I think that we can all agree on that. Now, I find it very fitting that the institute and the symbolism there, the institute that he sent her to was the Empathy Institute.
Yeah.
What did she do to Mr. Milkshake? She had no empathy for him. She punished him over paper clips. She basically complained about him over using big words. She didn't present any sort of human empathy towards him or towards the innies. So I find it very full circle that when he gets to choose where she goes to the empathy center.
Ooh.
Because she displayed a lack of it.
That makes perfect sense. I love the symmetry of that. I love how that kind of does come full circle, and you see the irony of her having lack of empathy and now being sent to the empathy center. Like that does it's a perfect kind of coincidence, kind of very ironic. The irony is just great there. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I think I think that makes perfect sense because yes, the way I kind of took this scene was it almost seemed like this was Milchick's way of getting a little bit of revenge. That's kind of, he almost has that look of kind of glee on his face when he's telling her to smash it again, again, again. So I definitely understand, them portraying this as Milchick trying to take back that control, trying to take the control back that Miss Wong kind of took a little bit from him by giving him this negative performance review, by constantly kind of being a very subtle but small thorn in his side and going against him and questioning his judgment, not wanting the Innies to have a funeral. You do get the sense that they were playing a small little mini game of tug of war all season for, a game of wits. And here, that's kind of how I saw it as well, where this was the scene where Milchick could finally kind of take that upper hand back and get a little bit of revenge in the process, where sacrificing something when you ascend, when you graduate, is something that is real in the Lumen book, as you mentioned, though. So that's good to know that that was confirmed. But yes, the fact that he himself was the one who was able to choose what was going to get sacrificed, I mean, totally makes sense how he would choose this game. It's her favorite game. We see her playing it in other episodes. It's the one perk she kind of keeps on her at all times. So it does make perfect sense that Milchick wants to take something away from her that is very meaningful to her, almost as a way to, like you said, gain that upper hand, but to teach her a lesson and to get a little bit of that revenge on his own, for everything she did to him. So no, I think that scene makes perfect sense. And in terms of her being sent to the empathy center, I mean, you nailed it with that one. That does just fit perfectly. She had a very much a lack of empathy all season. And to the point where, again, she didn't even want Irving to have a funeral. And then in this last episode, or what could be her last episode anyway, it's almost like she finally finds her way to having empathy the way she handles Dylan when Dylan tries to resign and tries to quit. And you see that Milchick, that mini milkshake, Miss Wong, she takes it kind of harshly even. I do feel like she genuinely felt a little bit bad in that scene where she straight up tells Dylan, I'm sorry, I should have facilitated better. So she does kind of come a little bit full circle, going from not seeing the Innies even as human, having no empathy at all, to having empathy for Dylan and feeling bad that she didn't do her job as efficiently as she could have, seeing that this is the end result, that Dylan now wants to quit. She feels bad for not facilitating in a better degree. So it was interesting to see her kind of come full circle there.
And what do you call that? You call that empathy.
Yes.
When you are able to relate to somebody's pain, while you may not have lived the pain and you will never understand it, that's empathy. So it kind of does all come full circle, where after having an experience where she didn't get a choice, she realizes, I'm sorry, I should have done more for you. And realizes that being an Innie is not all that she maybe thought it was, that they are human, that they do have feelings, right? So I do love how empathy, the theme of having empathy, comes full circle. You even see it in Dylan's story, where Dylan can't understand why his outer self wouldn't have empathy for him, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they tend to do that, where they will carry a theme through all of our characters.
Yep.
I do see that we have some super chats, so I don't know if you.
Yes. Yeah, let's get to this. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we do have a new one from Kings. Thank you so much, Kings. Oh, and yeah, this is a very interesting question coming from another female perspective. Yes. What do you think, PM, of the female characters? We have a pretty good variety of female characters here on the show, from the Miss Wongs to the Gemmas to the Hellies. Like there's at Cobells, there's a lot of compelling, strong characters there. Do you have a favorite female character, and what's your overall take on them, as King asks?
Thank you, King's Pork. I always get your name wrong because I can't pronounce it. King's Sports Call. Thank you. So I think that Severance does an excellent job at examining the female experience, the experience of being a woman in every aspect aspect. Every single one of our characters shows you what it is to be a woman in this world by showing you different experiences that we go through, right? I was very surprised when they showed Helena and Hallie's storyline, where they spoke about consent.
Yeah.
I thought it's amazing that they are experiencing something that we ourselves as women, unfortunately, go through in the real world, and we are seeing it depicted. Hallie had to go through a situation where her consent was taken from her. So I think that that was an excellent storyline. Now we know Miss Cobell. Well, we don't like Miss Cobell. She has the storyline of a woman who is intelligent enough to come up with a technology that can revolutionize the world, but it's taken by a man because either she is too young or she doesn't have the means, or nobody would believe that that technology comes from a woman, a girl.
Yeah.
So we see the human woman experience depicted through all of them. Even in Elena, we don't like Elena, right? But once we get to know a little bit more about her life and how she has grown up under her father's constant micromanaging, you can see how having an issue with your father can affect your life, how it can shape you,
Yeah.
how they are important to you as a woman, how they shape who you become, right? So what I think about the female characters in Severance is that they are all across the board showing us what it is like to be a woman. And they're doing it in a way that is honest and that is not dramatic and in your face. It's not for drama, right? It's just doing it as a way of showing you that these are real people. Now, Gemma. I cannot talk about this without talking about Gemma.
Mhm.
Gemma, I think that most closely would relate to the average woman, as her personal experience that is shared in Severance is that of having a marriage, attempting to have a family, um, maybe not being successful at that, and what the experience of not being successful at something that you should be able to do, what that feels like. Walking us through her miscarriage and not letting us go the way that other shows let us go. They let us look away. They didn't let us in this one. We had to look at her having the miscarriage and getting into the shower the entire time. So I thought that they did an excellent job at that and showing that this is very much a real thing for a lot of women. We had, right, the Academy, Igor, who shared with us his own experience.
Yep.
It's very much a part of a lot of our stories. Trying to have a family, trying to have a marriage, trying to keep it all together, and failing at times, failing at that.
It is one of those things where and that's why family is super precious, because it's not something that is granted. It's not something that's guaranteed. Some people don't have the luxury of having families, but no, that's a very interesting question, and it's a very good question to have, on these kind of streams when PM is up here and all of the other females in the chat that might have similar experiences or giving their view on it, because I feel like Severance, they have done a pretty good job at crafting just good old-fashioned characters, whether it's male character, female character. I look at these characters and I see a good, strong character, and well-written, well kind of fleshed out. And we know Severance likes to dive into some of the heavier topics every once in a while, some of the more difficult real-world topics, like you just mentioned with the miscarriage scene, which was portrayed incredibly realistically, but respectfully. And that's one thing that we've talked about in the past here on the channel is, yes, Severance tends to kind of dive into some of the darker aspects of life and some of the more serious things, but they tend to be handling a lot of these topics, or most of these topics, with care. They're handling them respectfully, and they're not looking for that shock value that other shows tend to look for, tend to lean a little too much in every once in a while. So no, I think that's a great question from Kings, and a phenomenal answer from RPM Philosophy. Wow, good stuff. Very good stuff. Strong female characters, sort of like an onion. Some have deeper layers than others. Absolutely. I mean, just like a male character as well. I mean, yeah, some have a little bit more of those deeper layers to kind of peel back, and you learn a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more as the story goes on. And I feel like Cobell is kind of a good example of one of those characters, one of those onion layered characters, where we meet her in season 1. And she's this super cold, super stern, super mean kind of middle management corporate America boss, kind of ruling with an iron fist over these innies in season 1. Then we see her outside persona, Mrs. Selvig, and we see how completely different, completely polar opposite her Mrs. Selvig persona is from her Miss Cobell persona. And you were listening to, I believe, the podcast where even she talks a little bit about that in terms of, crafting this Mrs. Selvig persona as like the ideal, nice version that she wishes she could be, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so the actress talked about when Miss Selvig became to her character, right? A way of escaping a childhood that was so traumatic that she could pretend to be a real human person and what that would be like. It was so strange to us, right?
Yeah.
However, to her, that's the best that she could come up with because her childhood was not a normal childhood. Not only that, but we see her create the technology. Now, Sevis, if you have not joined Jeremy's Discord, join Jeremy's Discord. We have excellent discussions back and forth. And one of these discussions, we were discussing the possibility that she did not come up with this technology from a place of evil. She was a child after all. She was a working child when she created this technology. Potentially, we came up with the idea that she came up with the technology because she, as a child, wanted to escape the reality of having to work at the ether factory for 12 hours a day, of being a child laborer.
Yeah.
They were all escaping, right? Drugs are a form of escaping your reality. And so she came up with something better, something that would allow them to escape the reality while they were at work. So it might not have come from the darkest of places. She was a child after all. And if you think about who would want to sever their brain to the point where you don't remember your workday, it's probably a child worker.
Yes.
Somebody that is being forced to do this to the point where they are getting high, right, at 8 years old.
Yeah. And that is an interesting aspect. And I mean, that was one thing that we touched on a little bit when episode 8 did come out, in terms of what was Harmony Cobell's ultimate goal by creating this technology. Was it just to create it to kind of utilize it in a more nefarious way? Or did she maybe have a little bit more of a noble goal when she was designing this product, when she was designing this idea of severing somebody's brain into two personalities? Did she have, actually altruistic goals behind her when she did come up with it? You mentioned her working in an ether factory and potentially wanting to forget or be severed from the just incredibly grueling day-to-day work life that must be, especially for an 8-year-old kid, as you mentioned, to the point where they're huffing ether just to get through the day, which has devastating consequences on the town all of these decades later. But we also see that her mother was deathly sick very early on. When she left for the Myrtle Egan School for Girls, her mother was still alive. She was still alive. She was sick, but she was still alive. So I wouldn't be too surprised if there was some kind of motivation like that for her, and somewhere in the back, where maybe this is a way to ease her mother's pain, either ease her mother's suffering. We see it we see it happening in a similar manner with what Lumen's doing, using it for births, having pregnant women go to these birthing cabins with their innie form, have the innie give birth, so the outie doesn't have to feel the pain, go through the trauma of a long, arduous labor, and just gets to reap the benefits of a newly born child. But they don't remember any of the grueling labor that the innie went through. It's messed up to create an innie just for this purpose. Like that's super wrong. It's super immoral. But I wouldn't be surprised if, again, she was younger. She was more of a child when she first probably conceived of this technology. did she maybe have her mother in mind in some small way where she could potentially help her too, help herself at the ether factory, help everybody at the ether factory, and help her mom at the same time? That's always been interesting, and it's always something I've wondered. What was her true goal? What was her true intention by creating the severed chip? And did she have a more noble goal in mind? And Jame, Egan, and Lumen came around and just took the device and used it for their nefarious means to create the perfect, very immoral employee. So that would be interesting to know what her original goal was. Why did you create this technology, Harmony Cobell? I would love to hear her answer that question. Would love that. Great stuff. Great stuff. The children in the Severance universe are the smart of all shows. They have a PhD level neuroscience curriculum. Yeah, I mean, it seems like we see Miss Wong, and she is risen all the way up to head or second in charge of the Severance floor. And you certainly don't get there by being dumb. That's for sure. They traffic kids too. They just did with Miss Wong, and that's another thing we see a really good glimpse of in this episode as well. Ghost MKC, 100% agree. We've always known that Lumen has practiced this horrible method of child labor all the way back since Cobell was a child, and probably well before that even. And we see the devastating consequences it has not only on the people who are forced into the child labor, but the town itself. I mean, we see the town of Salt's Neck is again utterly just decimated after Lumen came in there, mined it for its resources, put nothing into the town in return, and just left it in its wake to wither and die. And yeah, now we're seeing that this child trafficking kind of ring almost that they have assembled here is a very efficient system that they seem to keep, constantly moving, where they recruit girls super young. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a male equivalent of the Myrtle Egan School for Girls. I imagine there's got to be some kind of equivalent of that for boys. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Milchick came from the boys' school version of that. Like, there's got to be a boys' version. It can't just be the females' school for them to kind of find and get child workers. I imagine they're looking for child workers of all varieties. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had a male version of that school as well. But that is one thing we see in this episode, is how kind of disgustingly efficient their child labor system is, where they recruit these children super early, super young, separate them from their family, completely begin to indoctrinate them. And we get like a sense of just how sick it is in this episode with Miss Wong in particular, when she is finally getting ready to graduate and move on. It's super dark. It is super dark what they put this girl through, and what they put her through is, as I imagine, what they're putting all of these children through. All of these child labor children that get put through this are probably going through something very similar as Miss Wong did. But we see that early on, she is forced to not only kind of break her favorite toy, but as she graduates, we hear that her bed, Miss Wong's bed, is going to be moved from her parents' house to where she is going to be going in Svalbard, which is in Norway, which is super indicative of how they really view these children, this child labor, as just that. They're just labor. They're not humans, where they're not even letting Miss Wong go home to pack her own bags and say goodbye to her family. They're shipping her directly from Lumen to Norway. They're not even giving her a chance to go home and say goodbye to her family, which again is another kind of clear sign and a very common method that organizations like this will use to isolate people, to indoctrinate them. This is the purest form of isolating one from one's family, to sever that familial attachment. Lumen does not want Miss Wong going home to seeing her family. They do not want Miss Wong to start wanting for a life outside of the company. They are molding these children into being the perfect worker, to the point where they're not even letting them say goodbye to their own family. They're sending them right from Lumen, right from where they graduate, directly to where they're going to be posting them in who knows where, all over the world. And again, you just get another inside look in this episode at just how vast and how kind of sick this kind of child labor system that Lumen has really is. It's super efficient. They run it all around the clock, where you go to the school, you graduate the school, you get sent right off into the world, and you don't even get a chance to see your family. It's the most efficient form of indoctrination, I would imagine, but it's incredibly dark. It's just incredibly dark, incredibly tragic to see what they put these children through from such an early age. And yeah, Miss Wong is just the latest in a long line of victims of that system.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that when we follow the way that the world has advanced, Severance is showing us symbolically again what companies and different cults and different religions do to maintain child labor. So back in Miss Cobell's day, you could have children working at your factory. You could just have them working there. It wasn't a big deal. Now with Miss Huang, you have to come to it through a different means. Well, she's still working, right? She's still providing labor for the company. They come to it and they evolve. These people, the companies, the corporations that want to take your children, indoctrinate them, and make them like perfect little workers, they don't stop at children. They don't stop with the laws that come through to help the children. They just come up with better ways of making that a possibility, like the Wintertide program, where it is very common to have a program where they tell you your child is special. Your child is so special that they qualify for this program. And once they create that separation between you and your child is special enough that they qualify for the program, but you can help them.
Yeah.
It's not enough. Like you are not enough, and the school system is not enough. We are. The company can make your child the best that it could possibly be, like in Miss Huang's case, right? We don't see her parents having a say. We don't see her parents witnessing the ceremony. If the ceremony is supposed to be symbolic and meaningful, why were her parents there to see her graduate? And it's because they have created that separation, right? And they have now told them, because you're special, you qualify for a program. And this program is like all of those unpaid internships where you are providing labor for a company but not getting paid, just being told that you're doing a good job and that should be enough for you. So I think Miss Juan's case, I completely agree with you. It's a very sad and tragic case of a child being indoctrinated into a company.
It is, yeah. It's full on indoctrination into a system at an incredibly early age to just exploit those children, spit them out, send them off into the world. And it just seems like it's a process that's never ending. They're constantly kind of feeding this massive machine that they've created here. And yeah, it's sad.
But
It's
I do see the chat. Sorry. I
No,
do see
please.
the chat like giving their input, and the Sevis are always right. Sometimes I forget the words, the Sevis always know.
Sevi's
It's
always
the
know.
gifted programs. So of course we have that in our real life. You could be in AP or gifted programs where you become, right, the center of attention because you are so special and because you're so intelligent. However, that's always leading you to a certain sort of job or a certain company that is sponsoring these programs. So I totally know what you guys are talking about. And yes, when people are saying company and cult, we here at this channel have always called Severance a corporate cult. And I actually think that's going to pay off, Jeremy, because this is a corporate cult. Like it's nothing but.
It really is. I mean, this is not a business. This is not a business. Yes, I mean, profits are the end game. There's a bottom line, but it's deeper than that. It's not just this business. It does have this religious undertone, this cult-like worshipness, this worship mentality that they want their employees to have, that they want the child labor that they're they're cultivating to have. It's definitely cultish. I mean, at this point, I don't see how it can't be construed as a bit cultish. Very, very cult-like indeed. Indeed. Any proof of an outside world at this point? Yeah, I mean, how much of the outside world have we actually seen inside Severance? I guess is the point. I mean, we've seen, small inside the city, but for the most part, most of the story has been located inside Kier, the town of Kier, and the surrounding area. How much of an outside world have we ever seen? Not a whole lot, as I recall, but yeah, who knows? Who knows? Like anything beyond this town. Yeah, is there something trippy going on here? Is this one giant Lumen Truman show? Maybe. I don't know. Rickon had 3 beds for his kids. I think the show highlights the dangers that come with new tech. When does it cross the line between ethical and unethical? And that's exactly a huge kind of subplot of Severance, isn't it? Like that's exactly one of the things we see them talking about, where the Severance technology is widely opposed. There's a lot of people held. There's even states that have outlawed Severance. It's not legal in every state in this world that Severance is set in. So there is a big opposition to the very idea of the technology itself. Some people look at it as immoral, unethical, creating a form of indentured servitude where you're creating these workers who all they know is work and nothing but. They have no respite, no downtime, no way to enjoy any of their hard work. They work, and that is all that happens to them. They don't get to experience the 10, 12 hours that the outie gets to go experience when he or she goes home to sleep at night. The innie doesn't get to feel that rest. All the innie knows is it steps into an elevator and then literally steps right back out of the elevator a second later to start another day of work. And you can imagine how torturous that could potentially be. That does sound like hell to me, being forced into this job where you're literally, you work a whole day. It's like, oh, great. It's the end of the day. Get to go home. Nope, not quite. It's the end of the day. You worked your ass off. You get to step into that elevator and it literally, you feel like you're stepping right back out of it 1 second later. That is hell. That sounds like hell on earth to me. It's so you can totally understand why the technology is widely opposed.
And it reminds me of one of my favorite Jeremy Eisenfire videos, the Frankenstein video. That's one of my favorites. You have an excellent quote that I probably cannot recall as well as you do because you have the best vocabulary, where you explain just because somebody has the intelligence and the ability to be able to do that, the ethics and the morals behind it, should you? Just because you can, should you? Does that mean that you should do this, right? And you probably could phrase it better, right? You have beautiful vocabulary. I know how you explained it in that video. It was not like that, guys. It was better. But that idea of Frankenstein, you could be a mastermind. You can figure out how to create this wonderful technology according to you. But just because you can, does that mean you should?
Exactly. There's always a question of just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should do it. You need to kind of stop and kind of think of all of the ramifications that can go on here. Unchecked science essentially is some of the worst science that you could ever kind of dive into, especially unchecked science without any kind of moral ambiguity behind it, anything like that. And that is what we see here on Severance. That is exactly what we see here with the Severance technology itself. It is the amalgamation of unchecked science that is just able to go into any direction it wants with no restraints, no restrictions whatsoever. And that is how we get the Severance chip. And that is how innovation happens sometimes. You have to kind of dive into places that other people aren't willing to dive into. But again, it does raise that moral question, that moral conundrum. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Sometimes maybe you shouldn't, even depending on what that thing is. But no, and again, that's why I really would love to know Cobell's original intent for creating the Severance chip. Why did she choose to create this thing? What was her original goal? I just have to believe her original goal wasn't the same as Lumen's. I mean, maybe it was. It could potentially have been. She might have only created this just to kind of create a worker. Her intention might have been a little bit more noble if she was trying to save people from the awful effects of the ether company, or at least not having to experience that during the day. So maybe she did have some kind of noble goal behind her, but I really want to find out what she really created the Severance technology for, because yeah, it's one of those things where just because you can create this thing doesn't necessarily mean you should, especially considering if it falls into the wrong hands, this is what you end up getting. You get this giant, multinational corporation like Lumen, who just operates with impunity everywhere they go with no consequence. So you got to be careful unleashing this kind of technology into the world. If it falls in the wrong hands, the world's going to be screwed.
Yes, and now that you say it like that, I recall the quote, Sevis. It was the advancement of science without moral consideration. And that in itself just perfectly wraps up Severance. It is the advancement of science without moral consideration for what it does to the human and what it does to the innie. As we have seen, the innie suffered in many ways. Even though you would think you're just working, how could you have a love life? How can you fall in love? But when we see like Dylan's story, he suffers in that way too. He suffers by being offered the opportunity to see his family and then having that taken away.
He does exactly, and it is. And again, I know a lot of people, seeing the kind of cult like mentality that the company does have. But yeah, I mean, I felt super bad for Dylan in this episode. I could not help but feel for the guy. I wasn't a big Dylan fan in season 1 for the most of season 1, but I feel like his character shifted for the better after he found out he had a family. I feel like it just made him a more compelling character. It felt like he finally had something to live for, something, a goal to strive towards. Meeting his family, finding out who his family is ultimately. And before that, Dylan, I kind of always just saw as the kind of the office class clown. That's kind of how he was. He was the funny guy, cracking all the jokes, never too serious. But I feel like once we got that really good piece of character development for him, when he found out he was a father, it changed his character for the better, I feel, in so many ways, where I found myself kind of getting a little bit more invested in Dylan's storyline. I started liking him a little bit more. I started seeing him in a little bit of a different light when his goals and his own wants and needs started to change. Before that, we saw Dylan. He was one of those characters where, he loves his perks. He's super addicted to his perks. We even hear Irving bring up his perks at the end of the season. He's like, don't bring them into this. He was super protective about his Lumen perks. He loves them. He loves his, his finger traps. But, it was very interesting to see the turn his character took once he found out he did have a family. It seemed like those things started to matter just a little bit less. And his main priority was, I want to know my family. I want to know the name of my son. He has this one memory in his head, and I can only imagine what that must be like living like that if you were any Dylan. You have this one memory in your head of waking up in some random closet and seeing your son just run up to you and hug you. And that's all you have. That's the only memory you have. Is that those 5 seconds. And of course, Milchick standing in front of you, asking you about some stupid car that you stashed behind a bathroom. So I can only imagine why, well, at least I should say, I can totally understand why Dylan's character changed so much when he did find out he had a family, because he did start to realize that he had stakes in this world. He started to realize that he has something that he wants to strive towards beyond just the day-to-day life in the office. And yeah, it was good to see Dylan we kind of saw his story kind of come full circle here in this episode, where it was him kind of at the beginning of the season. He's super happy. He's getting to meet his family, the one thing he's always wanted. His Audi's wife has agreed to come and see him. He's getting the one thing he's always dreamed of, meeting his family, even falling in love with her. She's kind of falling in love with him a little bit as he reminds her of how her husband used to be when he was a little bit younger, before he kind of fell into this kind of mode of thinking that he's in now, this depression that he's in now. Innie Dylan represents the earlier version of Dylan for her. That's probably why she was so attracted to him. But yeah, you see poor Dylan in this episode, and it really does all come kind of crashing down for him, where he thinks that he's going to have this great life ahead of him, where he's going to propose to Gretchen. She's going to say yes. They're going to live happily ever after. And it's so sad, because you just knew that was never going to happen. That was never going to be the case. as much as Gretchen and Dylan might have liked each other and might have even loved each other, it simply just was never going to work. You are an innie at the end of the day. At the end of the day, you do not exist outside the confines of this workspace. You can't take care of our family on the outside. You can't take care of me on the outside. You're living half a life. It's fucked up to say, but you're living half of a life. It's just, there's not a possibility for that to work. And you can see Gretchen was heartbroken by saying no to him when he asks her to marry him with the paper ring and everything, the little paper ring that he made. Super funny. But yeah, you can tell Gretchen, it was breaking her heart to say no to him, but she knew what he was asking was just simply an impossibility. It was something that was not possible. It was outside of the realm of anything he was capable of. And again, it's sad. I can give you a life, please. You feel bad for the guy. But yeah, this is one of those things that it just wasn't going to work. And now I guess it'll be interesting to see how it's going to affect Dylan going forward. He goes away from this kind of encounter wanting to quit. He doesn't want to be around anymore. He's in that exact same state of mind that Bert was in at the end of season 1 as well, where after losing that Irving was in, after losing Bert, he just wanted the pain to end. He didn't want to continue going on. He just wanted it over. And now it seems like that's where Dylan is at right now. He doesn't want it to continue. He doesn't want the pain to continue. He just wants it over. He wants to quit and die, essentially.
Absolutely. And I do see that the Sevies are divided on Dylan. So that would be an excellent poll, by the way, for our Sevies. Some of our Sevies believe that in the chat that Dylan has not changed and he has always been selfish. Other of our Sevies believe that Dylan has changed for the better and that he has sacrificed himself for the team. So that would be an excellent poll to have. But one of my favorite things, while you do that, one of my favorite things about this specific scene was when Dylan is so oblivious to what the real world is, because he does have some of the most hilarious lines other than Rickon's lines, like questioning why his Audi is he said fuck up, or is he what's wrong with him, right? Yeah. He does have hilarious lines. He says, when Gretchen says, I told my husband about us, he says, is he happy for us? I make you happy. No. Is he happy? It's no, you don't tell somebody's husband that they kiss somebody else and the husband goes, oh my God, I'm so happy for you.
Poor
I'm
guy.
so happy for you. So that in itself was hilarious. I would like to see what the poll says. However, I believe that he has changed for the better. Mm-hmm. I understand how somebody could say that he's still selfish, as he's only focusing on what he wants, his family. And he's not really helping the team because he doesn't want to lose this new perk of being able to see his family. Yeah. So I could see how that could come off as selfish.
Yeah, I you could definitely understand that. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
He has changed for the better. What do you think?
I think he has. Yeah, I do think he has. I think as soon as he found out he had a family, I do feel like it made him a little bit more serious. I feel like he wasn't, he was still funny Dylan. He was still kind of the same person, but I feel like he had a seriousness about him that he finally felt like he had stakes in this world where he didn't previously. So I do think him finding out he had a family changed him a little bit. I do think it changed him for the better. Now, does he still have that little streak of selfishness in him as well? Absolutely. I think both of those things can be true, where he did change for the better, but he's also still selfish a little bit. Because we see what Dylan goes through in season 2, where Lumen starts dangling these kind of visits in front of him, under the promise that he kind of becomes a model employee, and he doesn't help, and he kind of even gets to the point where he doesn't feel comfortable helping his other MDR co-workers with some of the things that they're asking for, like Irving, for instance. We have Irving coming right up to Dylan asking him, kind of pleading with him, help me find this elevator, come and find this with me. And Dylan says, oh no, he gives him some kind of excuse, as to why it would be better if just Irving goes. So yeah, I could totally understand, a portion of the chat thinking that Dylan might have remained a little bit selfish, because I think he did. I think a part of him maybe did. I can understand that, because he was, at the end of the day, ultimately looking out just for himself, to continue these visits, to continue to seeing Gretchen, if it meant not helping his friends, these people that were very friendly to him, that are very friendly to him. So I can understand both sides of that argument. So that's definitely an interesting one. The poll is looking pretty interesting. I mean, I know it's only been up for a few minutes, but we are at 75% say yes, Dylan has changed. 25% say no, he hasn't. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. But yeah, I think he changed a bit. I think he changed a little bit for the better when he found out he had a family, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to erase all of his bad traits. A little bit of selfishness can still be there. And I do agree. I think a little bit of it is. But I do think he's ultimately a bit of a better person since he found out he had a family. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. I mean, I don't know. I do not know. And speaking of Irving and Bert, we also got a kind of a pretty much, it felt very final, at least. When I think of the scenes we saw with Bert and Irving in this episode, these scenes felt like they easily could have been in a season finale or a series finale even. It had that finality feeling to it. And that was one thing I was wondering, and I wanted to ask you, PM, and ask each and every one of you in the chat as well. What did you guys think of overall of how the Bert and Irving story ended? I mean, this has been a pretty interesting story that has been brewing ever since the very beginning of the series in season 1, when both of their innies first found each other and fell in love. And now here we are, almost 2 full seasons later, wrapping up season 2. And it almost feels like we are seeing the ending of their storyline. Like the way this episode ended, the way they ended up parting ways, I did get that feeling like this was the end for these characters. Like me personally, I wouldn't be too, I mean, as much as I love Christopher Walken, don't get me wrong, and John Turturro, I love both of these actors, and I would love to see more of them on the show. I think the way their stories ended in this season was satisfying enough for me to never bring them back. Like, I wouldn't be disappointed if they never brought them back. If this was their ending, I wouldn't be too disappointed. But I guess that's my question. Seeing how their story did end, as tragically as it was, with Bert kind of admitting to Irving that, yes, he has been working for Lumen for 20 plus years. He is a kind of low-level enforcer or goon, as he says. And he, although he swears to Irving that he's never killed anyone himself, he has driven people to very shady destinations, people who more often than not end up disappearing, according to Irving's research. He's researching all of these missing persons, and most likely these are some of the people that Bert himself has driven. So I get the feeling Bert knew exactly what was happening to these people that he was driving, and I think that's what gives him the guilty conscience. We meet when we first meet Audi Bert a few episodes ago, when we have that incredible scene with him, Irving, and Fields. When we meet Fields, we find out that Audi Bert, very much believes that he's going to hell when he dies. He doesn't feel like he's earned a ticket into heaven. And I think now we know why. I think this is exactly why, because he has been doing this kind of work for Lumen for Lord knows how long. Even though he knows he's never killed anybody himself, he knows that he's actively participating in the deaths of others. And I think that thought alone is enough for him to believe that he has not earned his way into heaven. So I think, again, we're getting that answer there for Bert in terms of why he felt that way. But in the end, it seems like he ended up doing the right thing where Irving was concerned. Irving, of course, and him were their innies fell for each other. And one thing we hear Bert say in this finale is how he wants to feel what it's like to be innocent again. He wants that feeling, and he knows his innie is innocent. And since his innie loved you, that's enough for him. That's enough for him to kind of act to save this person if this was the person his innie loved. So what did you think about the ending of the Bert and Irving storyline in particular? And what did you think about it, UPM and chat? And guys, Do you think this is the real ending for Bert and Irving? Will we ever see Bert and Irving on the show again? Will they return in the finale? Will they return in season 3? Or do you think this is the end of their storyline? And would you want this to be the end of their storyline? Again, me personally, I thought this was a really, really good, kind of beautiful ending for them. So I would not be disappointed if they did not bring them back at all. But then again, I wouldn't be disappointed if they did bring them back either, because they're two of the most phenomenal actors on the show. But me personally, I would be totally satisfied with this being their ending. But what about you, PM? What did you think about the Bert and Irving kind of storyline coming to a head? And do you think we'll see either of them again?
Well, I always wanted them back because I'm a big fan of their relationship. However, when I hear you explain the finality and the beauty of this finality, it makes me change my mind. It makes me reevaluate the ending. It was quite a
The reason why it's so beautiful, and I'm so sorry to interrupt, I just totally forgot to say this because you mentioned the beauty of it. The reason why I think it's so beautiful is because part of me is believing that Bert is sacrificing his life doing this. Now, in the inside the episode, we hear Ben Stiller mention that Lumen is the one who sent Bert to Irving's in this scene to clean up his mess.
Yeah.
So Bert was supposed to drive Irving somewhere where he was going to get killed, but instead he disobeys Lumen. So I get the feeling that Bert might not even be alive to come back. I would not be surprised if Bert gets killed by Lumen because he completely disobeyed a Lumen order. And Christopher Walken, the actor, said in the behind the scenes for this episode and for these scenes in particular, he felt like it had a kind of Romeo and Juliet theme ending to it, a Shakespearean kind of ending to it. And it does, in a sense. If Bert knew that by saving Irving was him ultimately sacrificing himself, sacrificing his life, I feel like it makes their ending that much more beautiful. But I'm so sorry to interrupt. Again, so sorry. What did you think of Bert and Irving?
I love that you added that. I love that you added that because it does make the stakes higher.
A little bit.
It does make it more important, and it does make it more final. So we can feel good about the finality of it. You're absolutely right. When you put it that way, and when we know what's at stake for either of them, Irving was supposed to die because Lumen wanted Bert to kill him, to drive him to a place where he was going to disappear. When you think about the finality of it and the fact that he is sacrificing potentially his life to save Irving, it makes you think of a Romeo and Juliet ending. And how can you say no to a Romeo and Juliet ending? It's beautiful. It's the one of sacrifice, one of love. They have a very touching moment where they put their heads together again, just like we knew them. As we knew them, as we saw them as innies when they were in love. So it's quite interesting that they did that as outies because that's what they did as innies. Now with Bert, the chat is commenting, and I completely agree. What's really interesting about the relationship on the outside is that Irving doesn't need helping. Like saving. Potentially, Irving could save himself. We know that he has some skills that they have hinted at, and potentially he is also a very skilled part of maybe the Defiance. And Bert is part of the other side. He's part of Lumen. However, Bert is willing to save Irving, to save his life. And that in itself is a major sacrifice. I do love when he meets him at the apartment. He says, "Take a drive with me." And Irving is way too smart. He says, whenever somebody says that to you, Sevi, say no.
You say no.
He's like, no. And the way that it's so nice, but at the same time, very threatening. He gets closer to him and he says, "Take a drive with me."
Yes.
When it tells you, you don't have a choice. You're going on this drive with me. We're going, right? And it made me think, oh, maybe he is going to send him to his death. But it was
Yeah.
beautiful to see that he sends him to the train station and says, I can't know where you go. So just go somewhere I can't know about it, right? Um, Irving could be dead. That is correct, Peach. However, that even adds to the beauty of the Romeo and Juliet cross lovers,
The
never to
Shakespearean tragedy. Yeah.
exactly. And sometimes, while it is very tragic and sad, that could be satisfying and that could be enough. So if they don't return, this is enough for me.
It's enough for me too. Like, and I did see a few people pointing out we still aren't 100% sure. We still don't know who Audi Irving was talking to in the phone booth, which is a very good point. That is still a plot point that hasn't been fully fleshed out. So I definitely understand the want to kind of uncover that. But yeah, I don't know. Just for me personally, I wouldn't be too disappointed if this was the true ending of their story. I wouldn't be too upset. But speaking of who they're speaking to on or in the telephone booth, who Irving is speaking to in the telephone booth, let me find that comment once again from our pal Ghost MKC, because Ghost MKC had a pretty interesting theory on who he believes is on the other end of that phone in that scene. Who is on the other end of that phone? And I'm going to pull that up right now, and we are going to take a look at your theory. And again, I thought this was an interesting theory. I mean, there's been some pretty good ideas floating around out there as to who is actually on the other end of that phone. But yeah, this one was probably one of the better ones. All right, now I will read this, and would love to know what you guys think. PM, obviously, would love to know what you think as well. Chat, would love to hear your opinions on this. Pretty interesting theory we have here from Ghost MKC. And again, thank you so much, Ghost MKC, for a very well thought out theory like this. I like it. Again, I think it's a good one. I think it's a pretty good theory. It says, I believe I figured out who Irv was talking to. Turturro gave a hint saying there's a clue of who it is on episode 1. Is that season 1 or season 2? We don't know. That's an interesting point. If he said it was episode 1, but he didn't specify the season, which episode 1 is it? Season 1 or 2? So very good very good emphasis on that. We don't know. However, I just recently watched the pilot episode, and they mentioned a person that worked with Petey in MDR, but was fired before Dylan was employed at Lumen. The scene is when Mark is talking to Irv when interviewing Helly, and Irv says to Mark, so our last woman refiner was ? And oh, Carol, she was Dylan's seat. Yes, that's very true. It's a throwaway line, but it means she was here before Dylan, most likely the previous manager before Petey. Very possible. The mystery person is most likely who is in contact with Irv. It makes sense when everything else to me is ruled out for some measure. Food for thought. This was an interesting one. I thought this was an interesting one. I think it's well thought out. It's kind of connecting things all the way back to the very first episode. And if John Turturro himself did state that there's a hint to who he's talking to in episode 1, then yes, I mean, maybe this is a hint that he's talking about. But no, I thought this was a really interesting one because we really don't know a whole lot about that character, this mysterious Carol, the MDR employee that was there before Dylan. Was she the head of MDR before Dylan was there? Was she the previous PD? These are all very interesting points that all could easily fit into place. But what about you, PM? Do you think that there's a possibility that this Carol could have been on the other end of those phone booths calls?
Yes. And Ghost MKC, Sevi, the chat knows all. We have oracles in the chat.
Great
they
chat.
Constantly mention something and it happens. Yeah. So I always favor whatever the Sevis say. But I like it. I like it. You make an excellent point. You have something to back up your point, which I think is the most important thing when crafting a theory. Having something that is concrete and that is verbatim, which you do. And number 3, who doesn't love the name Carol? Being the mastermind behind the big machine. Yeah. Because it's such like a non-assuming name, right? Carol. But it sounds right. if Carol was behind it all. I love it.
I think it fits. I mean, I think it's a well-fitting theory, especially, again, it's a theory that you crafted where you gave, it's not just a theory, you gave actual decent evidence that takes place in the actual show to kind of back it up a little bit as well. And these are always some of the more fun theories. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't mind some tinfoil, diving into a rabbit hole every once in a while, a theory that's kind of just out of thin air, out of the blue. Those can be fun too. Theory crafting is fun after all, like the chat mentioned earlier. But these theories are the ones I tend to like the most, ones that actually have actual tangible evidence connecting them, pointing them that it could actually be likely, something that is a foreshadowing in the actual show that could potentially back up the theory. These theories are always tend to be my favorite, something that has, some more meat on it. And this does, again, if especially with the added context of John Turturro himself stating that in an interview that there's a hint to who he was talking to in episode 1. And I totally believe that John Turturro would say that because John Turturro has been known to spoil some things about this show in other interviews in the past.
Really?
We were talking about this earlier in the season when John Turturro, well before episode 4 came around, John Turturro made one kind of weird statement about how his Audi's training was carrying over to his innie. And that's how he was able to uncover Helly. That's how Innie Irving was able to uncover Helena pretending to be Helly, because something about the Night Gardener line just didn't sit right with him. He couldn't let that one line go. And John Turturro claims that Innie Irving kind of catching on to that was his Audi's training kind of passing over to him. And we do know some things might transcend the severance barrier subconsciously, however subtle it might be. But it seems like Innie Irving was experiencing some of the training that Audi Irving had, which is why he was able to uncover her. And again, this is why I like these kinds of theories where there is a little bit of meat behind them, because John Turturro has very much been known for almost spoiling some things in the past as well. He almost spoiled something else on season 2 as well. He was in another interview talking about, I believe it was episode 2 at the time, and they were talking about upcoming scenes in the trailer, and the interviewer brought up the watermelon. The watermelon that looks like John Turturro, that looks like Irving. And the interviewer asked John Turturro, what was it like filming a scene with a lookalike watermelon in front of you? And John Turturro let slip and said, I wasn't in that scene. I wasn't there that day. I wasn't part of that filming that day, which kind of gave us a little bit of a hint, like, holy shit, is he going to get written off the show? Does he get killed at some point? He kind of is known for giving small things away that can make you lead to having an interesting theory, because sometimes it's not so small. But yeah, that was also another thing that he kind of spoiled, where he said, well, before that episode came out, he said that he was not a part of that episode. He was not part of filming the watermelon scene. And that raised a ton of questions for us as to why is he not here? And that's what made me think it was some kind of memorial for Irving. And we actually said that on stream well before the episode ever came out. I thought maybe there is some kind of memorial for Irving. And it turned out that's exactly what it was. So yeah, John Turturro, he has been known to accidentally spoil some things here and there, because he talks about the show very enthusiastically. So I do believe he would say something like this.
I remember that. And that is, once again, Sevi's, another Mr. Jeremy Eisenfire's prediction that was totally true. I remember you telling us, he said he wasn't there. This is a memorial. This is not what we think it is. This is a memorial. And it turned out to be true. And none of us believed it at the time, because it was like, how are you going to kill Irving within one episode? He was such a big part of the show. And within one episode, you're going to go from him being such a big part of the show to memorial? Like, how do we get there, right? But once again, Mr. Jeremy Eisenfire was correct. And that was a memorial. And it was all because he slipped and said one tiny thing in an interview. I totally remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, again, actors like talking about the shows that they're on, and when they're enthusiastically kind of bringing up details that they maybe shouldn't, if nothing else, it tells you that John Turturro is probably really enjoying this role that he's playing, and he's enjoying talking about it to the point where he's so comfortable to mention things that maybe he shouldn't be mentioning. I know it's not huge spoilery stuff, but if I was a showrunner, if I was in charge of Severance, I would definitely be telling John Turturro to, hey, maybe be a little bit careful about what you divulge. Try to keep it located to episodes that have already come out, not ones that haven't. Because again, it did kind of
Jeremy is listening. Because Jeremy is always listening. So,
listening.
Which, by the way, okay, Jeremy is always listening. So this is in the previous podcast. So if you listen to the official podcast that Ben Stiller does, right, with the actor that plays Mark, I can't recall his name.
Adam Scott, I believe.
Adam Scott, with Mr. Adam Scott, they do an official Severance podcast. In the previous one to this, they do talk about what they love that the fans have created, right? And then they all go around and say, like, oh, I love that the fans made art. I love that the fans pay attention to every detail. And Ben Stiller says, I love the music videos that the fans are making, the music cuts that they make to Severance. And who makes the music cuts to Severance? Jeremy. So I immediately thought about that. I was like, oh my God, they totally have to like be seeing what Jeremy is doing, because I can't think of any other music cuts. And they're like, yeah, they make these music videos. Those are my favorite that the fans have created. And we have always commented on the chat, Sevis. Those are like the best songs put to the best like Severance scenes. We are fans of them. And apparently Ben Stiller is also.
Wow. That's insane, even thinking that that could potentially be the case, or that he's even heard our intros, which I do have a ton of fun making. I love making intros for the show, and having, whenever sometimes you just find a song that fits a certain show really well. And I think I got lucky in that regard, 2 or 3 times finding a couple of good songs for Severance. So no, I love the intros that we've done for Severance. I think they've been some of our best on the show up until now. So yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. If by any chance Ben Stiller has heard any of mine, then I'm super grateful. That's super grateful. I don't know if he has, but that's awesome to think. Well, thank you for that. I did not know that. But no, I mean, it's always interesting to see what the creators kind of what they pay attention to and what they don't pay attention to. Because I imagine if I was an actor on a very popular show that had a fan base that was, that was actively reviewing it, YouTube channels talking about it, and all these things, I don't know. I'd be that type of person where I would definitely be checking out these channels, and I would want to know what people are saying about the show. Are people liking it? Are they liking our performances? Are they not liking it? What's their favorite? What are they not liking? Like, I would be just too curious to not dive into that world head first. So that's something I always wonder. Anytime I'm covering a show, I always wonder how many of the actors are actually diving into content and trying to see what other YouTubers are talking about. And I know that there are certain actors on certain shows that have seen our channel in the past, which I'm super grateful for every time they mention something. It's super cool, which is how, of course, we got the Man in Yellow from coming on the channel pretty soon. He saw the channel and liked one of the videos and wanted to come on. Which is such an honor that he asked to come on here. Crazy. But yeah, it's I always wonder that whenever we're diving into a show, I always wonder, I wonder if any of the actors or showrunners are watching some of these YouTubers, some of this content, and what do they think of the fan theories? Because they ultimately, Dan Erickson and Ben Stiller, they know where the story's going for the most part. So I imagine they're going to hear some of these theories and think, oh, maybe that's a little bit close, maybe that's a little not, maybe that's absolutely crazy but funny. Like, I would be very interested if I was in their shoes to see what the fandom was talking about. But no,
yeah,
cool.
And we don't have to wonder, because they have, like the Sevis are saying in the chat, they have confirmed that in fact they do.
I know they look at some theories.
Not only do they do that,
Yeah.
but when they come across something they like, they save it So one of them said, oh, when I come across something that I potentially like, I save it. I have a folder of all of these things that the fans have made. And of course they are in the chat, right? Like, perfect example, the King in Yellow, right? The Man in Yellow, King in Yellow. It was hilarious to me, Sevis, because I was like, oh my God, it was not just one message, not two, it was multiple. And I was like, oh my God, the Man in Yellow is looking for you, Jeremy. Like, where are you? He's looking for you. He wants to talk to you, which is super cool. But for sure, they themselves have confirmed that they do go and look at what we have created, and they're very excited about the fact that Severance took off, because like you have mentioned, Ben Stiller himself said he didn't really know if it was going to take off.
Yeah, and that's crazy to me that he was I don't know if he didn't have confidence or if he just wasn't 100% sure if this kind of concept would land. But yeah, you hear Ben Stiller mentioning it in quite a few interviews. He thought this show was not going to be popular. He was not expecting the show to be as popular as it was. It kind of took all of them by surprise when it blew up the way it did, and I'm glad it did. It really is such a phenomenal show, and it's very well put together. But yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to see, what they're paying attention to, what they're keeping a closer eye on, what kind of things they're watching out in the fandom. Because again, if I was in their shoes, I'd be doing the same thing. There's no way I wouldn't be peeking at some channels and some discussions online to see what people are saying about the thing we're creating. How can you not at least be curious, We got Joe Eagle Oak for $4.99. Thank you so much, Joe Eagle Oak. Irv and Bert playing spy cat and mouse. Did Bert let Irving go so he could track him to learn who Irv is conspiring with? Could Irv be with Dorner? Ooh, interesting idea. I mean, on the surface, yes, it has this beautiful kind of happy ending of Bert, disobeying a Lumen order in order to get Irving home free. But yes, is it all just one giant setup? Is he hoping that Irving is actually going to return to the people he was talking to on the phone in order for Lumen and Bert to kind of get all of them in one fell swoop? Is it one giant trap? That's a very interesting possibility. And again, I think anything's possible on a show like this. Bert did seem a little bit adamant in terms of telling Irving, whatever you do, do not return here. But then again, that could have just all been him, part of his wishful thinking, hoping that Irving would do the exact opposite and come right back, or at least contact in some way the people that are on the other end of that phone. So no, I think that's an interesting idea that it could have potentially been a trap laid by Bert. What do you think about that, PM? Think that's a possibility?
I think until the last episode, the last minute of the last episode, everything is a possibility. So I try not to dismiss even the theories that sound insane to me, right? Let's be open to all theories. I like it. I like that it would turn something beautiful, something final, something Romeo and Juliet into the worst betrayal. Yeah. Because he painted it that way to Irving. So Joe Eagle Oak, if in fact he was doing this, Bert, then it would definitely be a backstabbing that I didn't see coming. I don't think any of us did. But Severance is a very it's a show where unexpected, right? Like, we just never know what's gonna happen between the relationships. Like with Mark and Helly, I always think about Mark and Helly when I think about the way that they maneuver relationships in the show, where they destroy them, they plunge them down into hell, they raise them up, and then they destroy them again. So this could potentially be it. And that would be heartbreaking for Irving and for us. I would be heartbroken.
It would be. I mean, and I think you said it perfectly. It would turn something beautiful into this darkness, where it is a little bit of a kind of, it's a tragic ending if this is how their story does end, with Irving sailing off into the sunset and Bert potentially being left behind to maybe even get killed by Lumen. Like, it is a dark and kind of sad ending, but it does have that beautiful finality feeling to it, where I would be satisfied if that was the ending. But then again, as you said, you throw this into the mix where it's just one giant trap and really Irving is still walking into a trap. yeah, it turns something that was kind of, Shakespearean tragedy beautiful into dark, dark and kind of dreary. So no, it's definitely an interesting idea. Definitely an interesting idea. Very, very possible too. Very possible. And Kings also brings up for $2 another interesting point that I did see some people talking about this in the chat as well earlier. Notice Irving's dog didn't see Bert as a threat. Very true. And that was one thing that a lot of people were talking about, not just in this episode, but a few episodes ago when they were having the dinner and Drummond entered Irving's house. We never heard Radar, the dog, bark once. So yeah, what does that mean? Does that mean the dog is just friendly around people? That mean people coming into Irving's house just doesn't mess with the dog? It doesn't frighten the dog, doesn't get the dog kind of wound up? Is the dog used to this kind of behavior? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one thing was for sure is, yes, the dog certainly did not see Bert as a threat. The dog was kind of just sitting there, just staring at Bert, and there was really no problem. Now, Radar the dog does look a little bit old. It definitely looks like a little bit of an older dogger. His whiskers are starting to get a little bit brown. He's got gray. He's got a little bit of that white fur kind of growing in around there. That's usually an indication that the dog is getting a little bit older. So maybe the dog's just a little bit older in his old age, and he's just doesn't get all worked up over people coming into the house. I don't know. But yeah, either way, you do bring up a good point that I did see other people talking about as well. How come the dog was so calm? How come the dog never once barked? Not only when Bert entered, but also back then when Drummond entered as well. The dog never made a sound. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the dog might be animatronic. Yeah, Radar is just too pure. Maybe. Yeah. Neither was Drummond. Yeah, exactly. Either Drummond wasn't perceived as a threat either. That's very true. Very true. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think there's a reason why the dog was just so docile, or is it just one of those dogs that just doesn't care?
You know what? I don't have any dog experience. I always wanted one. I always wanted a puppy. I never got one. So I don't have any dog experience. So you would know better than me if a dog would walk in, if you could walk in and the dog would totally leave you alone, or some people in the chat are saying maybe it's a command dog where it only attacks on command. Let's say a regular run off the mill dog, just regular dog, puppy. If somebody strange comes into the house, do they bark? Do they become aggressive, and do they notice? You guys would know better than me.
My dogs always did. Not all dogs do. I think maybe there are some dogs that won't bark, but the majority of dogs that I've seen do tend to bark at people they don't know. I mean, if it's someone they know, they smell them coming from a mile away, they don't bark. Like when I walk into the house or anything like that, my dog Oscar would not bark, because I feel like he could smell me, or he could see me coming, and he just wouldn't bark when I entered the house, no matter what time it was, day, night. But if strangers ever kind of walked into the house, or someone that he isn't familiar with or didn't see much or has only seen for the first time, he would at least bark. I mean, most of the dogs I've owned have barked at people they don't know, but they won't bark at people they do know. People they do know, they'll just kind of look, see, confirm who it is, and then just kind of keep doing what they're doing. But I guess it's it depends on the dog, and it depends on the upbringing of the dog as well. A lot of dogs is very much nurture versus nature, in my opinion. I know that some dogs get kind of branded as like quote unquote bad breeds, but I feel like there's more bad owners than bad breeds. I feel like every dog is capable of being raised as a pretty good dog if it's raised the right way. But again, there's a lot of factors. I think what kind of dog it is, what kind of upbringing did the dog have? Does the dog get skittish at loud sounds? Like my dog, of course, was super afraid of thunder and lightning, like super, super afraid of thunder and lightning. Anytime it would be thunder or lightning, the dog would just run and just jump on the bed. And this is a giant bull mastiff, mind you, a dog that just didn't seem to know his own size. This dog was around 140 pounds. It was a big monster of a dog. And he'd just come run and jump on the bed anytime you hear thunder or lightning. But he was very vocal, though. If he saw somebody that he didn't know kind of come into the house, he'd bark once or twice and then kind of stop. I mean, he was a very friendly dog. He would never bite anybody. But I guess it depends. It kind of is a dog for dog. Little dogs I've found, like smaller dogs, like Yorkshire Terriers, poodles, the smaller breeds of dogs, those dogs always tend to bark at people from what I've seen, far more often than not. It's usually the bigger dogs that have a better chance of being a little bit more chill. So I think if the dog is going to stay quiet, it makes a little bit more sense that it's a dog like Radar, a bigger kind of dog, because a smaller dog probably would have been yip-yapping the whole time.
That makes sense. And I do see that the Sevis are considering what you stated, the age of Radar. So I think with this one, Sevis, it might just be 50-50. It might just be that, it wasn't a big deal to Radar.
Maybe. It's I don't know. It's he didn't seem too intimidated by him. I mean, Bert obviously came into the house, opened the door, walked in, sat down on the couch, clearly felt comfortable enough to do all that, and the dog's just kind of just chilling there, sitting there looking at him. So clearly there was not an intimidation factor there, where Bert didn't feel intimidated by the dog, and the dog didn't seem to perceive Bert as much of a threat just based on his demeanor. And again, I do think the age of the dog definitely plays a factor into that, because the older a dog gets, the more kind of chill and docile it's going to get as well. So yeah, maybe this is just one of those dogs that just didn't bark at people. But then again, you also have other dogs like 88 Key says, my German Shepherd would never let someone inside. I had a friend that had a German Shepherd. And it was the exact opposite. They were fine with people coming in. It was people leaving that the dog had a big problem with. Yeah, a friend of mine had this German Shepherd, and every time I would leave his house, it would always be one of those things where the mom or dad had to hold the dog back, because we were super young at the time. I mean, we were only young teenagers at the time, hanging out at my friend's house. But it was always something that we always had to be conscious of. No one could leave without someone holding the dog back, because for some reason, again, this dog did not mind people coming into the house, but anytime someone would leave the house, the dog would just go for them and attack them and bite them right in the ass or in the leg. It was one of those things where, one of the parents had to kind of hold the dog back anytime we left the house to go outside to play basketball or to go home. Like, someone always had to hold the dog back, because this dog would just go right for us if we tried leaving, but was fine with us coming in.
It wanted to hold you guys hostage.
Didn't want us leaving.
It was twisted.
Twisted. Complete opposite from a normal dog. This dog. Crazy. My dog hated fireworks. Yeah, mine too. Another, loud fireworks. My dog was also very similar to it. Thunder, lightning, loud bangs like that, fireworks. The dog would be just jumping on the bed and going crazy, and just does not know his own size that much. Agreed, Jeremy. I owned a pure pit bull and was a big baby that loved everyone and kept stealing the neighbor's shoes. LOL. See, and that's a perfect point, because I have known some good pit bulls that friends of mine have had, and they've been the sweetest of dogs. And I do think a big part of that is nurture versus nature. I have to believe that dogs aren't just inherently evil or inherently bad and want to hurt children, want to bite people. It is more often than not, from what I've seen anyway, a dog's upbringing. It's nurture versus nature, not nature versus nurture. And that's awesome, Kiwi. If you had a awesome little pit bull there, that was super cool. I totally believe it, because I've seen a few of them that have been the nicest dogs ever, for sure. To calm Radar, may have brought over some of the cum glaze, and that's another possibility as well. Maybe Bert brought some food over for the dog to keep the dog calm, so he wouldn't attack him. That's also a possibility, for sure. Most dogs do hate fireworks. I think you're right. I think most dogs do hate fireworks and those just kind of really loud noises in general, for sure. All my dogs would just roll over and want a belly pat. And and some dogs would be like this. Some dogs wouldn't even bark when they see people come in. They would just say, hey, just pet me. That's all I want. Just pet me. Some dogs are like that, for sure. I think it varies. I think it varies from dog to dogs. And I agree with you, Matt Gilbert. Little dogs are yappers. The little guys, they're the ones with the biggest voice. They yap a mile a minute, and they're the tiniest little things. And I know, because I have a sister who has a little Yorkshire Terrier. It's had this dog forever, and it's just like that. It's exactly like that. It's this little yipper dog that just barks at everything it sees. The little dogs, they always bark. Little ones always bark. For sure. For sure. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Well, thank you both for the awesome super chats again from Joel Eagle Oak and from Kings. Again, thank you guys. Very much appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. Like police dogs don't bark at everyone, only when they find something or are trained to. Yeah, exactly. That's another good example. You know, police dogs, they're very well trained that they'll just kind of sit there right next to their owner until they're commanded to do something. Search for something, smell for something. And I believe I did see people bringing up the possibility that Irving's dog could have been a service dog or maybe even a retired service dog. And if it even was a retired service dog, it would have that similar mentality to it still as well. So that's a possibility. Definitely a possibility. For sure. For sure. But man, what an episode. What an episode indeed. I can't believe episode 9 is already here, has already come and gone. We are getting ready for the final episode of the season, episode 10. And again, it looks like next week's episode is going to be around 76 minutes in runtime. So it looks like they are making up for these previous 2 episodes being a little bit shorter than average, with a whopper of a finale at 1 hour and 15 minutes long. And apparently the episode is also going to be rated M for mature and V for violence as well. So apparently we got some violence coming to the Severance floor in the finale, which is something we usually never see Severance rated V for violence, because there's just no violence in this show. It's not that kind of violence. But looks like there's going to be some actual physical violence in the final episode. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what that means. And as Interface brings up, absolutely. Did your personal rating go up for this episode since last stream? And I have been thinking a lot about that. And I think I will raise it just a tiny bit. Now, my previous stream, when PM and I did the after show, the night the episode came out, I gave this episode a 7.5. And after seeing it a few more times, after seeing a few more of the deeper meanings, the Twilight Zone tie-in, I did end up raising my score a little bit to an 8. I went from a 7.5 to a solid 8. Now I'm definitely at a solid 8. I feel like this was a really fun episode. And yeah, I think it was worthy of me raising it up at least a half a point, because I did like it a little bit more after I watched it 2 or 3 more times to see some of the deeper connections, some of the deeper meanings. And again, Twilight Zone is always going to earn an extra point or 2. So for me, I am raising my score from a 7.5 to an 8 for episode 9 of Severance. And let us know in the chat what you guys think as well. Did you raise your score? Did you lower your score? How do you guys rate episode 9 of Severance on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being horrible and 10 being great? Where do you guys rate it? And what about you, PM? Do you have the same score as our after show? Did yours go up, go down, stay the same? Where is your rating for episode 9?
So I think it's the same, which was an 8. And I do see that a lot of the chat is saying 8, right? We do have to take into consideration that we had that beautiful Gemma episode.
Yeah.
I mean, that was beautiful. And then we have the I'm a killer, Mr. Milkshake, which was iconic. So we kind of have to take that into consideration when rating this one. It wasn't as iconic and it wasn't as moving, but it was still powerful. So I'm going to say an 8 for sure.
Awesome. No, I think 8 is a solid score indeed. And yeah, that's right where I'm at as well. I feel comfortable giving it a solid 8. I don't think I would go any higher, but yeah, solid 8. It was a good episode. And like you said, it's hard to follow up these just incredibly banger of episodes like like episode 7, when we did see the Gemma flashback. Like, that was hands down one of the best episodes of the season. That episode and episode 4 are the 2 best episodes of the season, I feel, in my opinion, or definitely my 2 favorites. Those are the 2 that I probably rated the highest. But yeah, solid 8. And like you said, we got some other 8s in the chat. Makida giving it an 8. We got an 8.35 from Constance. We got an 8 from James. We got an 8 from Vanessa. We got a 7.7 from Bill Chill, which is the same from his last score. Awesome. We got Code Knox giving it a 9. Solid 9. That's a very respectable score. Absolutely awesome. KC giving it an 8.5, another respectable score. Toothless Pace giving it a 7.8. Nothing wrong with a 7. And yes, this is great TV. This really is, in terms of just like really good quality storytelling on television and very good high production value. They're nailing it. They are nailing it. Samuel giving it a 9 out of 10. Kiwi giving it a 7 as well. We got a 10. Gemma episode was a 10, says Bug Mechanics. Yeah, the Gemma episode was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I think I gave it, I know I gave it a 9 or a 9.5, one of those two. I know I gave it one of those right around there. Probably the same as episode 4, 9 or 9.5. Definitely my 2 favorite episodes of the season for sure. We got an 8.5 from Xavier. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Copel episode was a 6 from Bug Mechanics. Hey, nothing wrong with that. If a 6 is your grade, then that is your grade. Absolutely. We got an 8 because of the Fectal toss. Yes. Yeah, that line from Milchick was absolutely epic. Seeing him finally stand up to Drummond and stand up to Lumen was such a satisfying scene. Such a satisfying scene. And for him to say eat shit in the most clever of ways ever, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe it deserves another half a point. Awesome scene. We got a 7.9 from Megan. We got a Quan Solar giving it a 9. Walk into Turo. Absolutely. We got a 9 from Ghost MKC. Awesome, Ghost MKC. And again, great theory earlier as well in terms of who Irving might have been talking to in those phone booth phone calls. I thought it was a really good idea on your part. It was a good theory, well researched. Good stuff. Good stuff, guys. Good stuff, each and every one of you. Zombie giving it a solid 8. Absolutely. 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 Great stuff, guys. Great stuff. But yeah, Severance has been firing on all cylinders. I feel like it's definitely the best show that's on television right now. I'm definitely going to miss it when it's gone. But once it's over, that doesn't mean the Severance content is going to end right away. For however long people want to talk Severance, we will definitely still do some live streams. Even though the show is over, if people want to dive back into season 1 and season 2 all over again and do some rewatch parties, we can definitely do something like that. I know PM and I are planning on doing some kind of Twilight Zone tie-in where we're going to go and look at some of the most interesting episodes of Twilight Zone that share the most similarities with Severance, and maybe do a little bit of a Twilight Zone Severance watch party / discussion. So the Severance content isn't going to end right when the show ends. We are going to be transitioning into The Last of Us Season 2 in a few weeks when that starts in April, which, again, anybody who has not seen The Last of Us Season 1, definitely check it out. The Last of Us, the first season was really, really good, I thought. And it's going to be interesting to see where the second season is going to go. But I will be here. We will definitely be covering that show going forward because I think it's going to be a good one on HBO. But again, we will still be talking Severance for as long as people want to talk Severance. We will be talking Severance. Absolutely. So if anybody wants to continue this, we will continue to do a few live streams after the final episode airs. And yeah, as long as you guys want to talk about it, we will be here to talk about it. But I want to give a big thank you to each and every one of you for joining us on this fine Sevy Saturday night evening. And very much appreciate everybody for taking the time out. And of course, a huge, huge thank you to my wonderful co-host, PM Philosophy. If you guys are not subscribed to PM by now, definitely subscribe to her channel. The link to her channel is in the description of this live stream. Definitely get over there, give her a sub, check out some of her Severance content because she's got some really good Severance videos herself. And of course, if you guys have not already joined the Discord, hop on into the Discord as well. We are always doing tons of stuff inside the Discord in terms of watch parties, discussions. There'll always be links to our newest and latest content in there all the time because I know I get a lot of complaints from people that YouTube doesn't always give them the notifications right away. So this is a way to combat that. You'll always get the notifications super early on if you're in the Discord for any content we put out. But again, I just want to give a big thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you again so much, PM, for being the best co-host ever. And until next time, Sevies, keep those tinfoil hats on, folks. Don't be afraid to dive into those rabbit holes, and we will see you on the next one. Oh, and postscript. Do not forget, we are going to be having the man, the myth, the man in yellow himself on the channel right here this upcoming Tuesday. We're actually just a few days away now, guys. This Tuesday, the Man in Yellow is going to be on the channel. Again, I was super humbled that he reached out to me and wanted to come on the channel. There's no way I could ever say no to the Man in Yellow himself. So we are going to meet the man behind the Man in Yellow. And I got some interesting questions in mind that I get the feeling he probably has not been asked before. That was one thing I always wanted to stay away from in terms of doing interviews. I didn't want my interviews to sound like the same old questions that always get asked in all of these other interviews. So I've been doing my best to come up with some very interesting questions for the Man in Yellow that I get the feeling he's probably not been asked a good amount of these. So I think we're planning on having a pretty fun discussion with Doug Hughes, who will be coming on the channel this Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we talk all things the Man in Yellow from season 3, and of course, where from season 4 might potentially be going. So definitely come back and hang out with us for that Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. And until next time, we will see you on the next one.